9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
A very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome to all of you to the unveiling of the Pitch Madison Advertising Report 2021. My name is Khyati Kawa, and I'll be your host for this event. And as you probably are aware, the Pitch Madison Advertising Report, brought out by the Exchange for Media Group and Madison Media, is the most awaited report on predictions of ad spends in the media and advertising industry. Over the years, the report has become a benchmark in the industry and is often quoted in the media, pitch presentations, company reports, corporate boardrooms, and even IPO documents filed by media companies. This report tracks and analyzes how and where advertising monies were spent last year and projects the future growth as well. It aims at understanding the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead for marketers and various media, including print, TV, radio, OOH, digital, and cinema. 6 months ago, Pitch Madison Advertising Report brought to you the mid year review of the worst year that the industry had seen in a long, long time. Putting the COVID 19 impact into perspective, it warned that advertising expenditure may well recede to 2017 or 2018 levels. And yet, the outlook for the second half of the year predicted increased FMCG spends, rise in OTT user base, and other positive signs. We are back once again to tell you how much of those estimates have been spot on and to present a forecast for 2021. Now, before we get started, we would like to thank our partners, our presenting partner, ABP News, Aapko Rakhe Aage, and our co-gold partner, Verizon Media Programmatic Made Simpler. We would also like to thank our tech partner, UpLife by Madison Turned, for handling this entire virtual event. Before we move forward, let's take a look at our partner's audiovisual.
न पाबंदी हो न कोई हद हो तो बस खुद बनाई सरहद हो। ये मुहिम है परतों में छिपे हर सच की तलाश की, सियासत पर रखी पैनी नजर और आंख की, खबरों की दुनिया में एक जिम्मेदार आवाज की, जुर्म और जुल्म के खिलाफ हर बेबस के लिए इंसाफ की। जब कोई हद नहीं इंसानियत के लिए जज्बात की, जब कोई हद नहीं खुशियों और ख्वाब की, तब कोई हद क्यों हो नए नजरिए और बदलाव की। तोड़ के हदों के ताले नए सपनों को पाले, बांधे सबको एक धागे, आपको रखे आगे। ABP News.
Verizon Media's audience is bigger than 97 New York cities, bigger than every sports event last year combined, bigger than the population of North America, connecting 200 billion cross-screen data signals daily to bring you a DSP with direct relationships at its core that delivers 71% higher average conversion rates than third-party segments, and identity that goes way beyond the cookie. Let's put our data to work for you. Harness the power of insights to reach the people you want, wherever they go. Digital out of home, connected TV, audio, native. Through unique omni-channel opportunities you can't find anywhere else. Put your brand at the center of it all with the click of a button. Our centralized planning and management tools help you captivate audiences anywhere.
Once again, our big thank you to our partners. Ladies and gentlemen, may I request you to join in our conversations on Twitter and Facebook using the hashtag PMAR2021. We'd love to hear from all of you. Now, to begin this event, may I please invite Mr. Naval Ahuja, co-founder Exchange for Media Group, to say a few words. A very warm welcome to you, Mr. Ahuja.
Pitch Madison advertising report. Let me start by thanking our sponsors, our partners, ABP News, Avinash, Rama, and the entire team, Verizon Media. As you all can imagine, it's been a very difficult, tough year for the media industry. Many parts of the media advertising business were very deeply impacted last year. But as Khyati mentioned at the start, the worst is behind us. We are coming out of the slump, and if the Q3 numbers of listed companies are anything to go by, I think we are looking at a quick rebound. There are a lot of pressure areas, pain areas still left in the industry, especially if you look at some parts of the business. And as we have all seen, last year was a year when digital OTT traction consumption really picked up. It was an inflection year for these industries. Clients, the ones who were not using digital or using digital in a very sort of small manner, have taken to it. Having said that, I think some key messages have come out very clearly from last year, despite the significant growth of digital, which is what a lot of people in India have been saying, that in India, media growth will continue to take place on parallel tracks. Growth of digital media does not necessarily mean significant sluggishness or death of other media. We've seen how television has quickly bounced back. Yes, it's been difficult for print, but if I look at Q3 numbers of some of the newspapers, especially the vernacular ones, I see that 85% of revenue circulation advertising is back in those newspapers. So I think Q4 onwards, they will also be back to their pre-COVID levels of numbers. Obviously, after what's happened last year, pricing pressure will remain because a large number of categories, brands, especially in the middle sector, mid-sized ones, will take much longer to recover. So I think pricing pressure is here to stay. But if we saw what happened with IPL last year, Star had the best IPL ever in terms of advertising revenues. Subscribers have paid more money to access television channels. So one thing is clear, has become clear last year, that strong media properties that get a lot of consumer traction will continue to do well, which might lead to more consolidation, as it has already happened, say, in the broadcast ecosystem. But the message is very clear. You create strong content properties, consumers, audience will lap it up, and so will advertisers. Radio outdoor, of course, have had the toughest year. But on the flip side, let's look at it this way. The base has been driven very low, and we can only grow from here and hopefully grow at a very fast rate. Numbers will obviously come back, growth will come back. A lot of companies also managed to save costs this year, and hence you might have seen many listed companies have reported increased bottom lines. I think one of the key focus areas, apart from numbers for our industry this year, should be bring back the jobs and the livelihoods that were lost because of the pandemic. And I think that's also a very important aspect of reviving the industry back to its pre-COVID levels. We might not be able to put exact numbers to the job losses and the livelihood losses, but I think that's a very, very important part that we all should need to take care of. As far as spending is concerned, we've seen a lot of new brands, categories have opened up, new launches. So many companies have got into FMCG products. We've had EdTech technology companies that have advertised. So I think 2021 is a year that looks very positive for all of us across all sectors. We don't have to be despondent. And as I'm not going to give any numbers. That's Sam's role here. But as the headline Sam has put out says, from gloom to boom, I think we are looking at significant good growth. What are one of the key objectives of all of us in the industry should be to make sure that growth is equal, it is equally distributed, and also to make sure people who suffered the most last year because of the pandemic are also able to get their jobs back. With that, back to you, Khyati, and over to you, Sam.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ahuja, for setting the context. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, it is now time to listen into a man who honestly needs no introduction. He's recognized as one of the most influential persons in the media and entertainment industry and continues to lead Madison as the largest independent media agency in the country. With more than 30 years at the forefront of media and advertising industry, Mr. Sam Balsara, chairman of Madison World, has an ocean of knowledge and insights that very few in this industry have. May I now invite Sam to share with us the key highlights for the Pitch Madison Advertising Report 2021. A very warm welcome to you, Mr. Balsara.
Good afternoon, friends. I stand before you once again, this time within a short gap of just 5 months since we had presented to you an interim report in August last year. Thank you very much indeed for participating in this webinar and for keeping your date with us year after year. Last year was the year when COVID virus brought about a catastrophic disruption in our personal, social and business lives and caused havoc in the economy. So it's no surprise that Indian ADEX could not remain insulated from the environment around us. In our estimate, ADEX dropped in 2020 by as much as 20%, and digital was the only medium that bucked the trend and grew last year by 10%. However, if you look at only traditional media, it has dropped by a dramatic 29%, so almost 1/3 of traditional ADEX got shaved off last year. If you look at figures for H1 and H2, they are even more dramatic, both in terms of drop in H1 and in terms of the recovery in H2, the drop being as much as 39% in H1 and almost a full recovery in H2 with a minor 1% growth over H2. Quarter-wise, the data is even more startling, with 3 quarters declining and only the last quarter registering a substantial increase of 16% over quarter 4 19. Predictably, quarter 2, when a strict lockdown was imposed, saw a decline of as much as 65%. That is why in 2020 the quarter-wise contribution looks very different from earlier years. Quarter 4 last year contributed as much as 37% and quarter 2 only 12%. In absolute terms, ADEX has degrown from 67,603 crore in 2019 to 54,151 crore, a drop of a whopping 13,452 crore, the highest drop ever in 1 year in Indian ADEX's history. With this drop, ADEX in 2020 has receded back to almost its 2017 number. And if you look at only traditional ADEX, we went back 5 years to the 2015 number, thus resulting in a 20% degrowth in ADEX. It is a bit disappointing to see that Indian ADEX is not as robust as the global ADEX and is more susceptible to vagaries of economic changes, because WARC tells us that globally ADEX degrew only by 9%, whereas in India, as I told you, we degrew by 20%. US ADEX, you'll be surprised to know, degrew only by 4%, and Chinese ADEX by just 5%. Though UK ADEX degrew by a substantial 14%, our degrowth of 20% makes India the most impacted advertising market in the world. Coming back to India, each medium behaved very differently. Digital came out unscathed, and as I said earlier, was the only medium to grow by 10%. All other mediums were negatively affected, though TV was the least affected with a degrowth of just 11%. Print degrew by 41%. But percentages here don't tell the real story. Print, being a large medium, actually contributed 8,120 crore or 54% to the total degrowth of almost 15,000 crore. OH and radio also suffered substantially, but since these are smaller mediums, the actual numbers of degrowth are not very high. Cinema, understandably, because of lockdown of cinema halls, virtually got knocked out of ADEX with an 83% drop and ended up with a share of just 0.34%. In terms of share of each medium, the big news is that digital has overtaken print as the second largest medium with a share of 31%, and print has lost as much as 8 percentage points, having dropped in share from 30% to 22% and slipped down to third rank. TV not only continues to be the largest medium, but it further improved its share by 4 percentage points from 37% to almost 42%. Share of digital continued its onward march, eating into traditional media, as this chart shows, with traditional media losing its share by as much as 8 percentage points from 77 to 69%. Mind you, traditional ADEX in India, one would have to recognize, is quite resilient, because even at a 69% share, it is probably the only major country in the world with such a high share. Globally, traditional media is 41% of total ADEX. Coming to different categories, e-commerce and education are the only two categories that bucked the trend and showed positive growth in rupee terms. FMCG, though it degrew by 13%, jumped up in share from 33 to 38% and became an even more dominant category in our ADEX. Many advertisers deserted TV, print and radio in quarter 2, but by quarter 4, almost all advertisers have returned to the advertising fold. I will come to a new list of top 50 advertisers and what changes one saw in this tumultuous year in a minute. But before that, I want to say that looking at the total number of advertisers in India, one will have to recognize that in a country of 1.2 billion with a GDP of almost 3 trillion US dollars, then this number is abysmally small. A large number and medium India businesses, it would appear, are yet to discover the power and business building potential of. Now, let's see who were the top advertisers in 2020. Our list is diverse with FMCG, telecom, auto, e-commerce, mobile gaming and consumer durables. But FMCG dominates the list with as many as 19 in top 50 and as many as 6 in top 10. Reckitt made a big push last year and rose up in rank from rank 11 to rank 2 this year. Contribution of top 50 advertisers went up marginally to 35%. Top 10 advertisers' contribution went up to 18%. TV and digital are getting stronger by the day in Indian ADEX, and therefore it is no surprise that our top advertisers spend 86% of their ATL budgets on these two mediums. Top advertisers spend 86% of their budgets on TV and digital, establishing firmly that these are two dominant mediums of ADEX, and their relative size also confirm this. Last year, this number was 78%. 10 new advertisers entered our elite list. Prominent amongst them are PhonePe, PepsiCo, Facebook and Hotstar. Many advertisers like Reckitt, Hero, Colgate, Nestle and GSK have moved up very many ranks. Whereas Dream11, Samsung, Google, Airtel and Oppo have dropped many ranks. The million-dollar question to now ask is what growth can we expect in 2021? The COVID strain in India is receding. Commercial activities have returned with a vengeance. GST collection January 2021 has been at an all-time high of 1.20 lakh crores. The economic survey projects that the Indian economy will grow in 21-22 by 11% in terms of real growth and 15.4% in terms of nominal growth. And our finance budget is more pro-growth than any previous budget. Vaccination has started and chances of a second wave, which has engulfed UK and parts of Europe, are low. What's more, Indian ADEX in Q4 20 has grown by 61% over Q3 and by 16% over Q4 of 2019. All this gives us the confidence to predict a growth rate of a substantial 26%, which will take ADEX to 68,325 crore. The last time that Indian ADEX had grown by 26% or even higher was in the year 2010, when it grew by 28%, following a degrowth in 2009 by 9%. If we grow by 26%, India will become the fastest growing ADEX market in the world, followed only distantly by UK with a growth rate of 14.7% and Australia 13.2%. Whilst in the past, digital has always grown at a higher pace than traditional media, this year we predict that the growth rates of the two will be similar, given that traditional media has degrown by as much as 27% and digital, on the other hand, has grown by 10%. Because many traditional media users who stopped advertising have come back only in Q4, and we expect them to continue to advertise in 2021. Now, even if we grow by 26% in 2021, we feel ADEX will still settle at the same number we achieved in 2019, thus highlighting that the coronavirus has knocked out 2 years from ADEX's life. Besides the fact that ADEX degrew substantially in 2020, there are a number of enabling events likely to take place this year, which we believe will help us to realize our 26% growth forecast. More categories and new advertisers are likely to get active after a hiatus, and advertisers in OTT, edutech, mobile gaming and digital payment categories are expected to spend heavily. Besides, many new launches are expected in the auto sector. Again, we expect a wide variation in growth rates across different mediums, with digital expected to grow by 25%, TV by 17% and print by as much as 35%. It could perhaps be more meaningful to view growth in 2021 against 2019, which shows up that digital should grow up by 37%, followed by TV at 4%. Of course, we do not expect cinema, radio and print to return to their 2019 numbers. TV, we believe, will drop in share marginally, but OH and print will grow their shares from last year. Digital, cinema, radio and outdoor more or less will maintain. Moving to individual media, let's see television in a little more detail now. For television, the year 2020 saw it all, with the mood swinging from despair to confidence. Slowdown in the first quarter pre-COVID, collapse in the second quarter due to COVID, no original programming on GEC, repeat of old Doordarshan classics which busted the charts in terms of viewership, all-time high viewership in news genre, IPL in Q4 and an astounding performance in Q4 in terms of ADEX. Whilst television ADEX did suffer on account of COVID, the drop in ADEX could be considered minor at just 11% compared to other traditional media's degrowth to reach close to 22,500 crore, almost at par with the year 2018. The ego boosting fact for the television industry is that TV has grown its share of ADEX to a high of 42% from 37% in 2000 19. TV ADEX moved like a yo-yo during the year. The year started poorly with Q1 registering an unusual 13% degrowth over Q1 19, which rose to a 61% degrowth in Q2 thanks to COVID. Q3 saw a quick recovery to almost the same level as 2019, but Q4 saw an astounding increase of 56% thanks to IPL and festival period. Whilst TV medium returned almost to normalcy as early as August 2020, January 21 volumes suggest that TV is booming. This gives us confidence to predict a 17% increase in 2021, which will take TV ADEX to 26,350 crore. While 17 is a good number, if you compare our 21 number with 2019, it's merely 4% higher. Two categories that stand out in TV ADEX are e-commerce and education. E-commerce almost doubled in size, growing 95%, with its share going up from 5% to 11%, and education tripled in size, taking its share from 1% to 4%. Whitehat Junior, Vedantu and Byju's helped the education category grow. Whilst FMCG degrew by 9%, it increased its share from 49 to 51%. Taking a closer look at genre-wise contribution by FCT, it appears that degrowth in regional channels has been the least, implying that national brands prioritize campaigns in their strong markets and regional brands came back to ADEX faster than national brands. Hindi GEC channels, the largest contributor to TV ADEX, also suffered, but not as much as Hindi GEC second line, which degrew by as much as 24%. Though we estimate IPL to have contributed as much as 2,700 crores or 30% to TV ADEX in Q4, share of sports genre shows a degrowth of 26%, given that live sports resumed play only from September 20 onwards. A major casualty of COVID has been English channels, who suffered a 40% decline in FCT. Now let's see print. COVID damage to print has indeed been massive, and print ADEX lost as much as 8,120 crore or 41% due to COVID, and lost its number 2 rank in ADEX, with its share having dropped from 30% to 22%. Understandably, the ravage done in Q2 when newspapers could not be distributed was massive at a minus 79%. But the good news is that in Q4, print ADEX is recovering to the pre-COVID level of Q1, though it is still lower compared to Q4 of last year by 15%. We are bullish on print making a sharp recovery this year and adding another 4,000 crore, which would mean a growth of as high as 35%. We believe our media barons will use every trick in the book, fight tooth and nail to at least partially regain their share of ADEX. Coming to categories, all categories we see have got affected in print, including e-commerce, which degrew by as much as 57%. Also, education, auto and FMCG were affected, though to a lesser degree. In terms of share, education has increased its share of ADEX from 10% to 15%, FMCG from 14 to 17%, and auto from 13 to 16%. And these three categories account for almost half of our print ADEX. Newspaper circulation in metros was affected a little more, and recovery seems to have taken longer, because of which share of Hindi newspapers has moved up from 35% to 38%, and English from 25 come down marginally to 24%. Kannada and Malayalam newspapers showed lowest degrowth, whereas Tamil, Telugu and Marathi newspapers degrew the most. Now let's look at the superstar of all media, digital. As I mentioned earlier, digital is the only medium that grew in 2020 by a decent 10%. With this growth, digital ADEX has reached a value of 17,000 crores and a share of 31% of ADEX. It's also significant that digital has grown in 3 quarters last year and degrew only in quarter 2 by 35% when there was a strict lockdown. This drop of 35% is to be seen in comparison to print's drop of 79% and TV's drop of 69% for the same quarter. We expect digital to grow by a further 25% this year to touch 21,000 crores. Over 2 years, 2020 and 2021, digital will add 5,773 crores compared to TV, which will add only 1,059 crore. 95% of all digital spends are on mobile. Looking at digital ADEX by various verticals, it is noted that share of search has come down by 5 percentage points and now stands at 18%. This is not because search has degrown in numbers, but other verticals have degrown much faster. Not only video has the largest share in digital, but in fact it has increased its share from 30 to 32% during the year. Both social and display too have marginally improved their share at the expense of search. Programmatic has taken firm root in India, and our estimate is that almost 40% of all digital spends are through programmatic. Let's see what's happening in outdoor or OOH. Our estimate is that in 2020, outdoor ADEX lost as much as 2,203 crore or 63%, taking it to a new low of just 1,292 crores. Outdoor has lost as much as 3 percentage points in terms of share, dropping from a 5 share to a 2 share. At 1,292 crore, it has gone back 12 years, because that is the number we achieved way back in 2007. Quarter 2 and quarter 3 have been virtually washouts for the outdoor medium, but the medium has recovered somewhat in quarter 4, though it is roughly only half of last year's quarter 4. We expect OH to double its size this year to almost 2,500 crore, but even with this substantial addition, it will be 30% lower than the number for 2019, but it will gain share of ADEX from 2.4% last year to 3.6% this year. Whilst every category in OA degrew, real estate and media degrew the least. Real estate is also the largest category, followed by FMCG. Let's review radio. Radio ADEX was the third worst affected medium, which degrew by almost 44% and came down in value from 2,260 crores to just 1,270 crore. This sharp drop has taken radio back to the year 2014, when it was 1,300 crore. With this drop, radio has lost 1% market share and now has a share of just 2%. Looking at quarter-wise figures, whilst quarter 2 and quarter 3 were disastrous for radio, quarter 4, the festival quarter, has shown good recovery, registering over 4 times the number it achieved in quarter 3. But even with this dramatic increase, radio ADEX is still 17% lower than quarter 4 of last year. We expect radio to achieve a growth rate of 38% in 2021. This will take radio ADEX to 1750 crore, still falling short by 23% of 2019 levels. Radio's share of ADEX is expected to go up marginally from 2 to 3%. Looking at radio ADEX by category, whilst all categories showed degrowth, the degrowth is least in BFSI at minus 13%, and this category has grown its share to 12% to share the credit of being the topmost category along with FMCG, which improved its share from 9% to 12%. Auto, another important category for radio, degrew by 31%, but improved its share from 7 to 9%. 5 categories now contribute to 51% of total radio ADEX in 2020. Lastly, let's take a look at what happened in cinema. Cinema suffered the most in terms of percentage drop, and in our estimates suffered a 83% drop, capsizing its low base of just a little over 1,000 crore to under 200 crore, a number it had achieved way back in 2007. This is understandable since cinema halls remained locked from the third week of March to November last year. Whatever cinema achieved last year was all achieved in quarter 1, with the balance 3 quarters being a virtual no-show. Cinema will definitely positively jump up in 21, but since most of the steady growth we believe will settle in only from H2, we expect cinema ADEX this year to be less than half of 2019 at 475 crore. As I come to the end of our report, as usual, we would like to end with some advice for all my advertiser friends. Advice number 1 is that advertisers would be well advised to use attribution modeling to discover uniquely what works and what does not for their brand. To continue to select channels or any medium on CPRP or CPT alone is a mistake in today's noisy and technology-backed environment. The old belief that a GRP is a GRP is a GRP is no longer true. A second piece of advice is that advertisers should bring pressure on respective research bodies to restart media research. Currently in print, both IRS and ABC are on hold, and in TV ratings, news channel ratings are not being released. Media owners, we believe, are under the mistaken notion that by putting media research on hold, advertising would quickly return to 2019 level. Such data, in fact, will provide confidence to advertisers that life is returning to normal. Final piece of advice is that whilst digital and TV are two reigning monarchs of ADEX, advertisers would do well to look at using print, outdoor, radio or cinema in a strategic way, at least in some markets, for some brands, for multi-brand companies. These are by themselves strong and proven media, and advertisers could take advantage of the softening of rates compared to 2019 rates that are likely to prevail in these media in this year. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for patiently listening to me.
Thank you so much, Mr. Balsara, for sharing those key highlights of the report. Ladies and gentlemen, what I'm going to do next is tell you what is in store in this day for all of you. After Mr. Balsara's speech that we've just heard, we're going to unveil the virtual launch of the report, post which we will be speaking to Mr. Uday Shankar and Mr. Vikram Sakhuja, who will talk on what the future holds for the Indian media industry, post which we will also be talking upon getting print, outdoor, and radio back to good times. This session will be held by Ms. Apurva Purohit, and post which we will also touch upon the headwinds and the tailwinds that the digital juggernaut must navigate to stay on course. This session will be held by Mr. Ajit Varghese, and lastly, we'll also have how to bring back credibility into news ratings this session by Mr. Avinash Pandey. And the evening will be concluded by Miss Lara Balsara. All of this is coming up shortly for all of you. I want all of you to join our online conversation. You can speak to us on Twitter or Facebook using the hashtag PMAR2021. Well, the most awaited segment will soon be here, but not before we thank our partners. Once again, I'd like to thank our presenting partner, ABP News, Aapko Rakhe Aage, and our co-gold partner, Verizon Media, Programmatic Made Simpler. We would also like to thank our tech partner, Uplife by Madison Turned, for handling this virtual event. Let's quickly take a look at our partner's audiovisual.
न पाबंदी हो न कोई हद हो तो बस खुद बनाई सरहद हो ये मुहिम है परतों न पाबंदी हो न कोई हद हो तो बस खुद बनाई सरहद हो ये मुहिम है परतों में छिपे हर सच की तलाश की सियासत पर रखी पैनी नजर और आंख की खबरों की दुनिया में एक जिम्मेदार आवाज की जुर्म और जुल्म के खिलाफ हर बेबस के लिए इंसाफ की जब कोई हद नहीं इंसानियत के लिए जज्बात की जब कोई हद नहीं खुशियों और ख्वाब की तब कोई हद क्यों हो नए नजरिए और बदलाव की तोड़ के हदों के ताले नए सपनों को पाले, बांधे सबको एक धागे, आपको रखे आगे। एबीपी न्यूज।
Verizon Media's audience is bigger than 97 New York cities. Bigger than every sports event last year combined. Bigger than the population of North America. Connecting 200 billion cross-screen data signals daily. To bring you a DSP with direct relationships at its core that delivers 71% higher average conversion rates than third-party segments. And identity that goes way beyond the cookie. Let's put our data to work for you. Harness the power of insights to reach the people you want, wherever they go. Digital out of home, connected TV, audio, native. Through unique omni-channel opportunities you can't find anywhere else. Put your brand at the center of it all with the click of a button. Our centralized planning and management tools help you captivate audiences anywhere.
Once again, our big thank you to ABP News, Aapko Rakhe Aage, our presenting partner, our co-gold partner, Verizon Media, Programmatic Made Simpler, and also our tech partner, UpLive by Madison Turned. Thank you once again. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now time to unveil the much anticipated Pitch Madison Advertising Report 2021. So I hope all of you are ready. Join us. Here we go, everyone. Without further ado, we present to you the Pitch Madison Advertising Report 2021. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That is the cover of the Pitch Madison Advertising Report 2021. Don't forget to keep your conversations going on Twitter using the hashtag PMAR2021. We would love to hear from all of you. The report will be made available shortly. Now we're moving on to a very interesting segment, one that many of you have been waiting eagerly for. 2020 has been an unforgettable year for the Indian media industry, and we all do agree, right? That what does this year, it's been really difficult, and what this new year has in store for us, we all would love to know. We believe one man has all the answers, and we can't wait to hear him out. So let's invite Mr. Vikram Sakhuja, Group CEO, Madison Media and OOH at Madison World, for a fireside chat with the man who knows it all, Mr. Uday Shankar, entrepreneur and FICCI president. Believe me, this is going to be a really interesting session. Do join in our online conversation using the hashtag PMAR2021. And here I would like to invite Mr. Vikram Sakhuja on screen. to take this conversation forward.
Thank you so much, Khayati. Okay, guys, the person that you're going to be bringing in front of you, he's broken the glass ceiling for all journalists to not only head a news channel, but he's also gone on then to most famously and brilliantly lead India's largest sports and entertainment network. And from there, of course, he went on to become the 21st Century Fox's APAC head. And then, as it transitioned to a Disney company, he was leading that. Now he's pivoted into a completely interesting and exciting new area of being an entrepreneur. And of course, he is our current FICCI president. He's an absolute visionary, an iconoclast, one of the boldest decision makers that I know, and a chap who definitely calls a spade a spade. It's an absolute pleasure and privilege to welcome on this entire dais Uday Shankar. Hi, Uday. I can see you've got a FICCI branding behind you.
Anything for some free advertising. I've learned it from you and Sambal Sara, Vikram.
Okay, we've got a lot to cover, so I'm going to dive right in and really looking forward to the session. Okay, let's start big picture. I think you're the first media professional to lead FICCI. What do you think can be advertising and media's role in shaping the entire commerce and industry?
It's a great question, very interesting one, Vikram. And first of all, thank you very much for having me here. Delighted to be part of this conversation, and always, a great experience to get into a conversation with you, whether it is formal or informal. I've always enjoyed our serious exchange of views. We both believe in what we say. So thank you for having me, even though I've exited media as an executive and professional. But to answer your question, I think we have somehow punched under our weight in media and entertainment as far as the larger role in making an economic contribution to the country is concerned. Also, in terms of playing a role in building the brand India, media and entertainment can play a big role. And I think we have not, and I'm not blaming media. I think the country as a whole needs to be aware of that. Country as a whole needs to understand how to leverage the power of that. I mean, if you look at brand US, just imagine the role that Hollywood has played. Before, I think it'll be tough to describe that what went global first, the American way of life or the Hollywood way of life and Hollywood content. Without Hollywood, it is anybody's guess whether we would have internalized as much of America and accepted it as seamlessly as we have today in across the world, from the developed part to the underdeveloped part, from democracy to totalitarian regimes. The one thing which everybody has internalized is this American way. We may disagree with politics, we may disagree with a lot of American issues, but the American way of life. And I think that's the role that media and entertainment can play in building brand India. And that comes with massive economic upside for the sector and for the country, because there are very few countries who have the potential strengths that we have in India in terms of our heritage of storytelling, rich cultural tapestry, the diversity, nuances of our culture, and our ability to tell great stories traditionally. On top of that, today, as the world is getting disrupted by technology, we also have, one of the strongest and most sort of broad-based technological infrastructure in the country. Our engineering talent, our capability to, visualize globally, Indian engineering talent is what is powering the technological advances. We should be able to do that here. But unfortunately, we haven't done that so far. But I think there is a huge opportunity for us to do that.
Great. So today's forum is one of actually talking the AdX and advertising. Now, specifically, the advertising and marketing sector for the longest time has been hovering at about 0.3% of the GDP. for developed countries, I mean, of course, you took the Hollywood example, but purely from an advertising standpoint, why do you think that has been the case out here, and what does it take to really stimulate ADEX as a share of GDP?
Again, it's a very good question. The answers are not easy to come by, but I'll tell you what my view on this is. That first and foremost, we are still in early stages of building the culture of advertising as an intrinsic part of a business enterprise. It is still considered, first of all, big companies game. It is still considered, something that you it's nice to do. It's also, there is a little bit of understanding in traditional entrepreneurs minds that it's a bit of a vanity play. It's not seen yet by and large across the board, from big corporates. Of course, it's very established, but as you go down the pop strata of business, it's still not seen as something that's an essential tool of your business. Of building your brand is a strategic lever of creating value and getting market share, creating a premium share of the segment. Those things are still not widely established, and I think we, as media professionals across the buy and sell side, we haven't done a great job of evangelizing. If you look at the number of brands that advertise in India, that number is still really, really small. It's grown dramatically because of digital penetration that has come in. But if you look at traditional media, TV, print, and radio, etc., that number is really small for a country of the size and diversity of India. Until you do that, and until we all go, just selling inventory and buying inventory is certainly not the best way of participating in the economic value creation that's going on. I think media can play a much, much deeper and larger role. The problem is that it's my community, and whatever I am today, I owe it to the community of media and media persons. So with full gratitude, if I can say, we have taken, we've been somewhat short-sighted. We have we have undersold ourselves. That we have run our businesses. We are extremely competitive within our own narrow set, even to the extent of destroying value for one another. But we haven't gone ahead and painted a larger vision for the world and created a central space for the community of media and entertainment in that larger world, in that larger
Wonderful.
vision. And that is where the big problem is.
Completely agree. Now, as we are seeing, and you mentioned that some of the growth, the number of advertisers are coming through digital. Over the times, years, we've seen that print used to have roughly about 2 lakh advertisers, 2 to 3 lakh. Digital also has about 3, 4 lakh. TV is in the maybe 10 to 15,000 range, and so on and so forth. Now, these are kind of numbers that we're talking. The growth momentum, of course, is right now all behind TV and digital. At this
Correct.
point, do you believe that this sort of momentum or this kind of trend is going to continue, and will some of these other mediums like print and maybe print radio will out of our home, probably not, but will these really die out as we see in some of the other markets, or do you see a sustaining power to them?
Look, I think these are tough days ahead for a lot of segments like print and out of home and radio, etc. They've been devastated during COVID. I don't read too much into that devastation, and I don't really, I saw this really, really deep and comprehensive presentation by Sam, and the data is, scary. But I think that will pass. But I've always believed that each crisis just manifests itself on individuals and businesses, and only brings out the latent strengths and weaknesses during the crisis. The crisis is the best sort of spotlight for the latent weaknesses and strengths. And I think what we see with print is, of course, distribution of papers was was disrupted and there was no advertising happening, so you see those contractions. However, it was already a trend that just got amplified dramatically. And if you're not seeing the bounce back as dramatic as you're seeing in something like, let's say, TV, and I have view on TV. But if you see that, it's primarily because the businesses, I mean, the newspaper business in this country has been built entirely on the back of advertising. That is a suicidal way to build a business. If you have two streams of revenue, why would you go and kill one stream of revenue? Just imagine a 3-year-old could tell you it's not an act of genius. And for 30 years in this country, we hailed those entrepreneurs and managers who pushed that line of strategy as amazing visionaries, because in the short term it worked for them. In the long term, everybody is dead. So this is really, I don't understand this. We all
That's a great segue you're giving me. So I'll come to your subscription versus advertising bit in a second. But you also said you had a view on TV. Let's hear that.
So again, the same on the view about TV. TV has done in the last 20 years. It has done better than most of the segments, and I think TV has created a national market for content, and more than that, for advertising. That's pretty commendable. I have to say that. Star played a key role in that, but the other television networks, the bigger ones in particular, and some of the stronger regional networks have played a very big role in that. However, TV has two problems. I think the first problem is television creativity has a lot of ground to catch up. You cannot have shows that premiered, reality or game shows that premiered 20 years ago. Still, if they're still leading shows on your network, there is a problem. It's just a simple problem of inadequate creativity. Television still does, good content, but we all complain about regulation, FDI restrictions, etc., foreigners not being welcome. But a lot of segments have been just kept alive because of those restrictions. If it was full-fledged global competition that we see in many other sectors, many sectors of media would have died. I don't even understand what happens in radio. Why? It's just, there are literally times when the same song is playing across multiple stations. You keep switching. You don't listen to the song. You keep switching, and you keep getting the same song. And when it's not because it's probably the best song or a song that the whole nation must listen to. It's because it's the song that's available cheapest, if not free. Now, there is a serious creativity problem or content problem in media in general, in TV, in print, in radio, etc., etc. The other problem is that we are still not very, we are not building brands. Again, the same issues that, there is not enough distinction that we are creating between channel A and channel B. There are sectors where it's automatically happening because, like sports, it's available exclusively on one channel, but by and large, there is a huge problem of that. And now the third thing is that when you're getting, the world of content has moved from being just a creative business. And I think, as I told you, that I believe that our creative agenda needs to step up. But the world of media has moved from being just a creative business to a business of creativity and technology. And by and large, media companies, no offense, my friend, but by and large, media companies think changing a bulb is the climax of technological skills. We set up a business. That's the last time we want to see an engineer or a technology guy come and set up my sets, put the lights on, make sure that in TV, teleprompter works, the rotary machine works, and get the hell out of my life. That's not working. A complete creative experience requires you to leverage the power of technology. And if you do that, and I'm not saying that technology, just even in building, look at the amount of technology that goes in creating visual content. It can scale up a great deal. And if you do that, it's a great business model. You can open up new markets. Smaller countries like Korea, like Turkey, they are exporting content globally and creating a sustainable economic model through that. And a country like India is not able to, our content does not generally travel even from one state to another, and
So,
that is
no,
a
so let's
that is
take
a
your
problem.
TV. Let's take your TV point to a logical conclusion. So today, let's say there are about 880 million people watching TV. You got about maybe 450 million people watching YouTube, and then you've got maybe about 120 million watching the other OTT platforms in an unduplicated way. Assuming that there is more creativity and tech happening in both YouTube and all the OTTs, are you saying that this number will dwindle for TV in favor of the other platforms?
you know Look, you must understand one thing. One of the great advantages TV has is that it's also supplying a lot of content to streaming services. So there is, that and that because you're creating that content and monetizing it across two screens, it creates a certain advantage. But I think we are coming to and the other big advantage that television has is that it's really cheap. I think to get a whole suite of entertainment, sports, movie, and news channels for anything from 150 to 250 rupees in this country is still possible, and that gets you the basic content. So that I think is a huge advantage, and that also keeps the pressure artificially high on streaming services, because when you're pricing content for subscribers, you have to keep in mind the competitive environment, and if TV is so cheap, streaming services can only be so expensive. So that is an advantage that TV has, but I don't see how it will be sustainable forever. So unless we change the creative game and really bring in high quality talent, make the right investments, and create content that travels beyond our immediate geography that we create content for, there is a problem. And then there's this whole issue of building brands. Whether everybody, whether it is the production house as a brand, Hollywood is as much known for its celebrity talent as it is known for its celebrity or well-known production studios. There, so we have an opportunity to do all that. If we don't do that, I think we will struggle.
Okay. Now, on the other part that you're talking about between advertising versus subscription, what exactly is you've known the consumers pretty well. Are they going to, how much are they willing to pay for content, if anything? I mean, of course, print is horribly subsidized. So we'd love to see them, but how much is the capacity of a consumer to pay for a newspaper, then pay for a TV subscription, and then or a DTH or a cable subscription, and so on and so forth, and the OTTs and all the other platforms. So,
Look, Vikram, I think
what would be your sort of kernel of advice that you would give to how a person would actually spend his money, the consumer would spend his money, how can monetize subscription?
So, first of all, look, we are in mass media, and both the words are equally important, media as well as the mass. So, you need to have a proposition that allows you to be attractive to the largest section of people. I totally get that. However, everything doesn't need to be sold to everyone. By definition, a Mercedes sells much less than a Maruti, but a Mercedes makes money on each car that it sells, and so does Maruti. Some people play the volume game, some people play the premium game, and we should be able to do that as well. I think not doing that is a mistake. So everyone just going after everybody, as a result of that, there are your capacity to, or your desire to pay or openness to pay for content is very different from somebody who's not in your who doesn't have the same background. So I totally get it that people who are just coming into the formal media consumer groups, only recently from small towns, villages, etc., people with limited income and limited exposure, you should create cheaper products for them that they can afford. But there has to be a agenda, almost continuous agenda, to get everybody up the value cycle. This is how everybody succeeds in business, that you bring in new consumers and you continuously get sort of upgrade that consumer in terms of their ability to to pay. and they will pay.
Great.
Consumers are willing to pay a great deal. In fact, often in my experience, consumers go an inch more or stretch a little bit more in order to pay for what they originally set out to pay, provided, and it's a big provided, they see a value proposition. But as I told you, that the content that by and large you see across our TV channels or in our newspapers or on our radio channels, there's really no, not that much
Sameness
more.
to it.
Sorry.
Correct. There's a lot of sameness to it, and it's about time they
There's a lot
reinvented
of
themselves.
sameness to it. So why, Asian consumers I've seen across the board, from across my during my experience of running Asia Pacific, I've seen Asian consumers to be very value conscious. I can't talk about consumers in other market, but value conscious doesn't mean that they are reluctant to pay. They want value for money, and we've not done enough in doing that.
Got it. Now, just I want to move to measurement, but before I do that, uh, on the language front, there was a time when mass media or media in India, especially TV and even print for that matter, was driven by, well, print was driven by English at one point in time, and then of course Hindi was what the TV part was. But increasingly, the regional play has sort of taken hold. In fact, you've had a huge role to play as you started the regionalization of Star a decade back or close to. And if tomorrow you're going to be coming out with some platform I mean, you're going to get into any content or platform, which language would you bet on?
Look, I'm a big believer in local languages, all local languages. Why would you, just because we were ruled for 200 years by the British, why this fascination to create a business model that is dependent on English? I don't understand. Those days are gone. And look, I came to Star. I did my bit in driving it into regional markets. But Star's philosophy was very clear. Fox, which was then News Corp, was very clear that they came in as a premium English content provider, but very quickly they pivoted and they went into Hindi, because that was the most attractive language by the size of population, and it worked really well. Launch of Star Plus, but so I think you're in that position in India where you can go and pick up really any language and create a massive business. But the question is, can you go and disrupt the status quo in that business, in that market? And that is where the problem. If you're going to be offering the same kind of content, the same proposition that 6 other players have had, then what's the point? Then you're not going to be able to create much. So I can give you one example that we went and my first acquisition in Star was this small channel in a small market called Kerala, and the channel was called Asianet. And at that time, everybody thought that I was stupid. But that stupidity has really worked brilliantly for us, because that channel has created so much value in the core market, and it has given us an ability to compete and win in most markets in South India. So it's not about which market you go to. I mean, the joy of 135 crore population is that you could find enough number of people interested in any business that you create. Question is, can you create a great business in the area that you've chosen to?
Great. Okay, now I want to talk briefly on measurement, because I don't know whether you caught Sam's piece towards the end when he's giving advice to advertisers. And we've clearly, 2020 has been, we've moved 2 steps back when it's come to TV measurement, when it's come to print measurement, it's been a complete halt. And of course, digital measurement continues to not have any industry measurement kind of thing. What would be your demand, both as FICCI president and as Uday Shankar, on this entire aspect of measurement? And would the two be same, demands be same, or would they be different?
Look, as FICCI president, I am not sure what the demand should be, but I think they won't be different. You know one thing about me, that I do not speak in different voices. What I believe as an individual is what I believe as in my official capacity. So I'll tell you what. First of all, it was really heartening to see Sam say a GRP is not a GRP, or a CPRP is not a CPRP. Finally, I think my job in media has been done, because I kept saying this for 15, 20 years, and the fact that Vikram Sakhuja and Sam Balsara have come around to that view, and it's being officially blessed at Pitch Madison Report Unveil, is is a matter of great satisfaction, because a GRP or a CPRP is not just a CPRP. There are CPRPs and there are CPRPs. Number one.
I mean, you
But my
managed to
bigger
get an inflation in a deflationary year. You got inflation on an IPL rate to well over 11 lakhs per 10 seconds. That tells you
correct.
that consumers or other advertisers see a GRP is not a GRP.
Exactly my point. They are not, but you have to create a proposition. People were starved for content. IPL was bound to be great, and I have to say that my erstwhile company and my colleagues in Star Sports, they did an absolutely outstanding job of producing the IPL. So there was consumer satisfaction, and I think we charged a lot of money, and advertisers paid, and I'm delighted that we were able to deliver on whatever they paid. So a GRP is not a GRP, but most important thing is that a sample based measurement, Vikram, was always a suboptimal solution, and it was limited by the technology available in the time. Today, when it is possible to accurately measure the whole universe and not just a sample. Why would you not do that? And if you are not doing that, there is always, you're leaving yourself exposed to all kinds of distortions. That's the real issue. There was a time when you could not get real time data, etc. So you picked up some sample and you collected data manually from there, and you did that. That was fine. The world was a different place. Before that, people maintained a diary of what they watched. It was as basic as that. But today you should be able to measure the whole universe. The second thing that I have, and it's a controversial point, and I'm not sure whether Fiki would endorse this point. So I'm making this in my personal capacity. Why do we need a community rating system? This tribal behavior of measuring content is really totally, again, is a legacy of the past, when it was so complicated to measure data, etc., that we all went and said to somebody, okay, you come and measure the data for all of us and we'll pay you some money. Why do we need to do it today? If none of the digital services are subscribing to third party data, and they are telling you that they have as many subscribers. If I could come and tell you that I have as many subscribers as whatever I had at Hotstar, and you would believe that, and if I gave you the data about their consumption behavior, and you would believe that, and you would buy advertising and inventory based on that, why would I not do that for TV? I don't get it.
Because the reason is because today you have three different, at least on digital, we've got three different data sources. They all give you different numbers for the same reading. So, I mean, arguably an OTT platform will give me a certain number, Moat will give me another number, and a third party will give me a third number. Which number should I go by?
You should go by my
So,
number. It is my proprietary information. You should go by my number. If you can accept the number that you get from the others, why would you not accept the number that you get from there? So I'm not in favor. You know my position on this. I've never been in favor of this third party measurement structure, because we have, look at the kind of distortion anomalies that we have created in this country. It's almost alarming, if not dangerous, what is happening in the name of data. This whole current controversy, without going too far into that, everything that's happened has happened. The whole degradation that we are seeing, whether it is in news or whether it is other controversy, is on account of our unhealthy obsession with ratings. Ratings are an important tool, but they're a business tool. They're a business tool for engagement between Uday Shankar as the media executive and Vikram Sakhuja as media buyer. You and I need a currency so that that what you're getting for what I'm selling. But now suddenly we over the years we turned this into a measurement of our machismo. We turned this into a measurement of our success. Data, the market share became the end all and be all, not of your business existence, but your entire existence. And that's unhealthy. And that has led to inadequate focus on, that has led to too much focus on tactical, sometimes distorted, sometimes outright corrupt practices. and inadequate focus on long-term health and strategy of the business.
So two corollaries from what you're saying. One is, yes, there needs to be a currency, which is why probably if you go to each channel or each platform and use their data, you may not get that currency. But second thing is that if that currency has to be there, do you think it's better that there is a system which is funded maybe as a percent of billings and managed by agencies and advertisers, and media owners are kept out of it, so broadcasters are kept out of it, would be more healthy?
To be honest with you, I'm indifferent to that. And the basic assumption here that you're making, and I disagree with that assumption, Vikram, is that if if broadcasters are involved in that, they will corrupt it, and advertisers and agencies will not corrupt it. I think the proclivity for that measurement system and that whole thing to be distorted or corrupted remains the same either ways. Who owns it is totally, I'm totally indifferent to that. You know that and full confession, I played a key role in bringing down TAM and setting up BARC. And I think BARC has been a huge letdown. But I don't think it's been a letdown because broadcasters and advertisers and agencies were stakeholders in this. I think it's been a letdown because we did not create a 21st century. We did not have a vision that was in tune with the possibilities in 21st century.
So for a moment, if you have to say, moving forward from learning from the past, do you think it would be better to again re-privatize? If you have to have a currency, you may say that
It's still
just
private, right?
which should be, well, right now it's still, there's a joint industry body which is sponsoring it. But do you think, and earlier, of course, it was a completely private company like TAM. Do you think it's better
I
to
think
probably
I think just for the controversy that involvement in BARC has created for broadcasters, they should just get out of there.
Okay, that's
It's
a
not
big
worth it.
statement we got out of you today. Okay, and
It's not worth all the suggestions of impropriety,
I
questions
completely
of integrity that the broadcasters have faced, because I think by and large broadcasters are clean business people and they have done a good job. They have serviced the consumer's interest well, and to tar them with the same brush just because there are some issues with BARC. The issues with BARC are intrinsic to the structure and management and capabilities within BARC. It's not that there was this grand conspiracy of broadcasters coming in to say, let's just do this. And it is the unsavory fallout is the reason, is one good reason for broadcasters to get out of BARC.
And just closing on the last point on that one, we've already seen that whatever the 22 to 25,000 crores is the TV AdX. There's another 5,000 crores of video coming through YouTube and all the OTTs. Probably that might grow. There has been this call for the longest time to have audiovisual ratings also coming out through the same sort of rating system. Now, in the past, that entire stalemate between measuring ads and content led to a certain impasse. How do you think we should now tackle that same issue? Because it's probably the same place where it was when you were maybe debating it.
Yes, it is still very much there. And I have no reason to believe that now that I have no authority, I would be able to make a difference. But, look, my view is very clear on that. That, my position. I've taken this position as the, leader of Star and Disney, that if everybody is participating, only then Star would participate. Simply because, we were the only company that had a substantial stake in streaming and a substantial share of television. And if some of the big streaming giants were not participating in that, Star should not participate. Because just because of Star's origins in TV, Star should not just do what the TV people do, because if its streaming service it is not competing with TV, it's competing with its streaming peers. And if Netflix does not participate and if Amazon Prime is not participating, why should Hotstar participate? I mean, that position remains the same. I think the world has moved beyond this concentrated one company measuring data for everybody. The world is moving, Vikram, towards disintermediation. And I'm fundamentally opposed to creating any kind of intermediaries, because intermediaries are usually brought in, and Bach is a great example of that, are usually brought in with good intentions, and then the intermediaries start serving only themselves. They don't serve either of the two parties that they're supposed to intermediate between.
Fantastic. Okay, last two questions. You've closely observed the entire advertising and marketing ecosystem, and you've seen how advertisers, agencies, and media owners behave. In this very vibrant and fast growing ad market, which of the three stakeholders have dharma on their sides? Is everybody, do you find you've dealt with all of them? Do you think everybody is doing equally righteous job, or are some people doing it more than others?
No, I think it would be. I think they're all by and large. I find there may be individual aberrations, but by and large, as community, it's one of the more honorable communities that I've seen, and I see that now across the board in my capacity. I mean, because I'm involved with businesses beyond media now, I see that, and I have to tell you that I find, my criticism of people in advertising on the agency side, or in broadcasting or content side, my criticism of them is of not having bold enough vision, sometimes too fixated on the past, being too tactical. But I don't think as a community it's a dishonorable community. Actually, I think they have done more for this country than they get recognized for, and that's one of the disappointments that I have. I think we have undersold ourselves. This is something that I started with. I think we do not see the role that we have played in this country. If Unilever is a big company and so successful in this country, of course its products are the reason why they're successful. And I'm just taking an example. It's not about Unilever, as you can imagine. But to say that those people who manage the advertising for Unilever, media buys, and the channels on which Unilever products were advertised, I mean, just imagine if there was no television channel, the biggest product would not find a platform to convey its message day after day with consistency and accuracy, and build a national proposition or a brand. So I think media has played a really, really positive, constructive role in this country.
Great.
And because we are not mindful of the deep contribution we make, and we ourselves sometimes largely get distracted by, we are entertainment, we are glamour, and we are all of that. We don't take ourselves seriously enough, so the world doesn't take us seriously enough. I think it's a great community, and this country, there are many things wrong with media, but this country would have been a much worse country to live in without media.
That's a very, very telling statement. Thank you. That's very good, very heartening. So we can't let you leave without you just telling us a little bit more about what your partnership with James Murdoch is, and what can we all of us look forward to in 21.
So, as you know, Vikram, I take a long time to think about things, and then I figure out something, and then I stick with it until I make it work. I'm in the first phase. I'm still taking a lot of time to think about things. But broadly, both James and I are really sort of excited about the potential of technology. And I have a very high level thesis, which I will, share with you and with our audience today. My whole thesis is that all the mass consumption services in this country, services and products, were not designed to meet the aspirations of 135 crore people. Whether it is media, just imagine 25 years ago, or play back 25, 30 years ago, why private media came up, not because somebody invited or not because it was part of a government policy. Private media came up because there was an unmet need which the official providers were not able to meet, whether it is the DAVP, whether it is Doordarshan, whether it is AIR, whether it is whatever. So entrepreneurship came in to bridge the gap, and today we have created, a massive industry around that. I think it's the same with, and that aspiration is growing today with more people owning mobile handsets and devices. The desire for consuming more content is just growing, and the current structures are grossly inadequate. You can only serve this by using technology in a very, very deep fundamental way, because that's the only way you can create consistent outcomes which are satisfying and which are at scale without bringing down the bank. Similarly, I think areas like education and healthcare, the same thing. Education in this country was created, formal education system was created by Macaulay, not for the benefit of this country, but to create a small class of, clerks for the British Empire. And after independence, honestly, with commitment, the successive political establishments have built on that. But the foundation has remained the same. Today, the one thing that's common is that everybody in this country, even a beggar, I'm just using this as an example, but even a poor beggar wants his child to be educated because they're very convinced that if their child has to have a better destiny, education is one essential tool. Same for healthcare. Healthcare wasn't built, hospitals were not created with the hope or with the agenda that everybody can go there and get treated. So you have this widening gap between aspiration and possibility of supply with the best of intent. The one thing that we have with us is technology, which can, not everybody needs to go to a school to learn. Not everybody needs to go to a hospital. COVID has told us that you can be at home and do a lot of things, including get yourself treated. Most doctors were not available, but we got ourselves treated using technology. And even though we were not ready for it, just imagine the power of technology. If you have the strategy, you're ready for it, and you build that. So for the rest of my life, I want to just give it a shot. You harness the power of technology to meet the needs of people who are being badly or underserved right now. I come from that part of the world. As you know, I come from Bihar. I have some exposure to what the underserved population's aspirations are and what are the challenges that they are facing. Hopefully, I'll be able to do something towards that.
Uday Shankar, thank you so much. As always, you promised, you've delivered all that you've promised. It was uplifting, it was provocative, it was definitely thought provoking, maybe controversial also, but very, very uplifting. Thank you ever so much for this lovely conversation.
Thank you, Vikram. Delighted to be, having, as I told you, that I have packed my bags and I didn't want to talk about media, but you are one of the oldest friends that I have in media. So it was a pleasure to talk to you.
Pleasure. Thank you. Over to you, Kathy.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Shankar and Mr. Sakhuja, for the most exciting session there, full of burning questions, and all of us were glued to our laptop screens. Moving on, March 2020 saw media activity getting disrupted like no other. Cinema halls closed, free movement hampered. OOH was pretty much one of the first casualties. Radio was another, and with circulation being hit, print was too. We have a very special speaker here with us who will tell us how to get print, radio, and outdoor, some of the most badly hit mediums of the COVID year, back to good times. I'm sure you'd want to listen into this one. Don't forget to keep tweeting also using our hashtag PMAR2021. I'd like to welcome amidst your virtual applause Ms. Apurva Purohit, President Jagran Prakashan. A very warm welcome to you.
Thank you, Kayati. Thank you for inviting me here. And as you've so evocatively said, yes, 20 was a highly disruptive year. I think us gathered today recognize categorically that the devastation and the decision it wreaked on everything, not just print radio, but on the entire economy, on our lifestyles, on the way we interact with people, on the way we look at things around us, has been absolutely devastating. However, however large may have been the scale of impact of last year in its devastation, I strongly feel that the moment that we are standing as we stand at the beginning of 2021, at hopefully the tail end of this particular crisis, is an equally, if not even more seminal one. Of course, year has been devastating. Of course, the last year has been disruptive. In all our collective living memories, I don't think we saw a year like that. But I think it's less about what happened last year, and it is more about what will happen as we go forward. What are the choices we will make? What is the judgment we will draw? What is the conclusion we will infer out of what happened last year? And I say that this moment that we are in today is truly a seminal one, because never before has the probability of a positive outcome and the probability of a negative outcome absolutely the same. So today, when we stand at the threshold of 21, there is a 50% chance that tomorrow will be better. We will get out of this hole and things will be positive, things will improve. We will see the summer of hope. Equally, there is a 50% probability that we are staring at the edge of an abyss and things can go far worse than they have been today. It is, I think, for the first time, at least in my experience, a Schrodinger's cat in our lifetime. You all know the Schrodinger cat experiment, that before you open the box, there was a 50 probability that the cat will be dead or the cat will be alive. It's only when we open the box we know whether the cat is alive or dead. And that 50% probability is playing out today. So, what will actually convert this 50% positive probability to a higher probability? What can you and I do together to ensure that a future is brighter than last year's been? And I think for that to happen, it is really the choices you, as leaders of businesses, as managers of media, the judgments that you draw and the conclusions you make, the learnings that you take forward of the last 1 year are going to be the only differentiator in ensuring whether we have a winter or a summer staring at us tomorrow. And to draw the right conclusions, to make the right choices, leaders need to know which trends in their business, which trends in their industry are the trends that are going to be the long term ones, and the trends that they need to latch on to if they want to see growth for both their businesses and the industry. So, what I'm going to do over the next 15 minutes is actually share with you three of the trends that I see that will play out for the media industry and the macro trends that will define our future. And if we easily pick up on these trends, I'm sure the future is going to be bright. So, the first trend that I want to talk about, next slide, please, is this entire trend of hybridization. I think in bits and pieces, we understood somewhere intuitively that hybridization is the way of the future. But it's only last year where we've actually seen that hybridization has come in our lives in each and every facet. Whether you look at this whole work from home, flexi time experiment, where everybody sat at home. And today, as the markets are opening out, it's not necessarily that everybody will come back to the old way of working and everybody will be back 100% here. We all recognize that there is a hybrid work model that will suit everybody. So, coming fully back to work is also not good enough. So, there is a hybrid model that all of us want to figure out and believe will be the efficient one. Similarly, the same trend of hybridization we are seeing, whether it is in the retail industry, whether it is about buying online, going to the line, the customer engagement that you get offline, matched with the phygital model where you search for things online, you compare prices online, but for the touch and feel, you go offline. Is in the fast food industry where initially there was skepticism, so dine in was the only way the fast food industry would be able to build their margins, and they always saw taste as competition and something that they have to ensure doesn't work. Today, everybody in the fast food industry is talking of three models operating: the dine in model, the takeaway model, and the and a model which is a hybrid of both these working together. So Phygital, Bopis is really how we are seeing all our marketers think of their businesses. From brick and mortar to complete digital was one way that worked a few years ago, but I think people are increasingly realizing that it cannot be either brick, it cannot be complete transition to digital. There is a model in between that will be the most successful one. And repeatedly, when we do surveys and researches, the consumer is telling us this, that we buy both online and offline. We don't want to move completely to digital because we lose the touch and feel, and yet digital efficient than the touch and feel. So give us a hybrid model. And this hybrid model is something that will play out even more in a country like India, which is so complicated that the urban rich and the rural rich, the urban poor and the rural poor, north rich and the south uh, SECA, very different animals. They are in very different life stages. So I think the first thing that we all need to recognize that our clients and advertisers have understood the power of hybrid, and that is what we as media buyers and sellers need to give them. Next slide, please. However, the unfortunate reality is that structured structured the binary fashion. So for some reason over the last several years, we think of media, we buy media, and we sell media in a very, very binary fashion. So either you are a TV consumer or a radio consumer. Either you go out of the house and you see outdoor, or you're sitting at home and you've never experienced outdoor. Either you read print, or you watch TV, or you are digital. So if you see how we are structured, if you see how India is structured, but radio plus digital, even if I want to do a radio plus digital plan, I don't know whom to go and, because there's a radio buyer, and then when we start talking about digital, we are asked to go and meet the digital agency. Where the reality is that the media consumer, next slide please, has historically always been hybrid. Can you please maximize these tables? You know, I started working in media 32 years ago. And 32 years, I was told that, print is on its last legs, and print, there is nothing more that we can do in print 32 years ago. And decade after decade, I just see that print reach has been going up, radio reach has been going up, television reach has been going up. Digital has come, but despite that, if you see the figures on the right hand side, 2010 to 2019, these are IRS figures. Digital has gone up dramatically, but so has television, so has radio, so has print. A research that we did recently before COVID and during COVID about the time that gets spent on media, you will see that each and every number has only gone up. People spent more time watching television, they spent more time interacting with internet. But did that mean that they spent lesser time on print on radio? No, time spent on all media has gone up. But the unfortunate truth is that even today, there are more media plans, which are single media plans. Look at the FMCG category. 100% of their advertising seems to be only on television. When the consumer that they are trying to reach out to doesn't see herself as a TV or an OTT viewer or only a digital viewer, she sees herself as consuming all forms of media and is completely comfortable transitioning from reading the newspaper in the morning to moving on to listening to radio, then coming back to watching television in the evening and spending some time on the net. Unfortunately, we have classified her as a binary consumer. Next slide, please. When research after research that we have done has shown us that only if you take multiple media can you really efficiently and effectively reach out to this hybrid consumer who is platform agnostic, who is media agnostic. Several years ago, when RAM and TAM together did some surveys, they pointed out to all of us that if 10% of a given television budget was replowed onto radio, the efficiency of the campaign would improve by 15%. Just last year, just before COVID, we did a campaign for one of our baby product clients, and this is clients' research. When they did a print campaign and then they did a print active campaign, their sales went up by 42%. I've been in the television industry and I know that for television, after their own promote their serials, the next best option is radio, which is why television and OTT is one of the highest advertisers on radio. So I can just go on and on and on. Every case study talks about the power of a media campaign to reach out to the hybrid media consumer. Our advertisers are realizing that the world is becoming hybrid. The world is a phygital world. And increasingly, they will expect us to give a phygital solution to them. I'm not sure whether we are geared up to that, both as sellers and as buyers. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yeah. The second trend that I want to talk about is, obviously we know the ubiquity of content. It is there everywhere. We consume content, we produce content as individual people. There are trillions and trillions of terabytes and bytes of content around us all the time, ceaselessly, continuously. Ironically, with this plethora of content, with this increase of content, equally we are seeing diminishing quality in the content that people consume. A Reuters study, a very recent 2020 Reuters study done across 40 countries, says that less than 4 in 10, just 38% people trust the news most of the time. Equally interesting is the fact that less than 46% say that they trust the news they themselves use. So I'm using the news, but I don't trust it. These are figures that we're reading about when we look at consumption of content and the credibility around new fake news. News is no longer a word. It's always coming attached with the prefix of fake these days. The interesting fallout of this, next slide, please, is that the trust of legacy media has only gone up. As credibility of news consumption has gone down, trust in legacy media brands has gone up. And I think this is something that we all recognize intuitively, because when there is flux, when there is uncertainty around us, we tend to go back to our roots. We tend to go back to brands that we trusted, to brands that we grew up with. We almost tend to go back to ghar ka khana. And research tells us that in moments of heightened uncertainty, consumers don't want to try anything new. And this, again, is a factor that, if you really put math to the English that I'm speaking, is something that all of us recognize. Because after all, what is trust? Trust is built only over time. And trust is built not only over time, but it is built over time when you are able to give consistent quality over that time. And if you see the research, for some reason, the table is not visible. Can you please click on this slide again? The table on the right side is not visible, which, yeah. So, a media credibility study that was done recently talked about having the highest credibility. And no surprises there. I think all of us understand that print media brands have been around for centuries. Over centuries, the way they have presented news, the way they have presented content to readers has been after a huge amount of work that goes in fact checking. We are using fact checking as a new word right now, but fact checking is what journalists who first wrote the article, gave it to the sub editor, who corrected, who then gave it to the senior editor, who recorrected it, who then gave it to the chief editor, who put. That is how news has been disseminated in print over centuries. No wonder that there is so much trust still in the print medium. One of the brands that I handle called Inkala, which is a 70 plus year Urdu paper. Our readers tell us that we've been reading it, our Baap Dada have been reading, and we trust this brand and we respect this brand so much that we don't even want it away or sell it away in Raddi. That is the feeling they have for a paper like Inqilab. And it is not something that could have been developed by a Johnny come lately over the last 2-3 years. It required that more than half a century of daily giving high quality, credible content to the reader. Again, a recent subject being studied that is doing the rounds right now talks about the fact that 60% of people believe that their well-being is heightened when they consume mass media. Because yet again, well-being gets heightened when you trust people you're interacting with. And mass media, I think, still commands the maximum. The interesting part in this graph is also the credible radio commands. Now, you and I may think that radio is, it's entertainment, music, RJs talking in between. So where is this credibility coming in here? But yet again, I think a very interesting ramification, and we ourselves were pleasantly surprised to see this high credibility, is not so much with the medium as it is with the RJs. Because again, consistently, all radio stations have had is who have been interacting on a very personal basis with the listeners over a long period of time. Next slide, please. So, what has happened as a consequence of this? Much before this rise of tribalism, much before this conversation around micro influencers, RJs had started building their own community who believed and trusted in the RJ. And thus, today, in our search for influencers, when we look around and say, okay, this YouTuber, TikToker has so many zillion views and so many million page views, increasingly clients are asking, page views and is all very good, but give me micro influencers who are also credible. And that is where people like RJs, people like editors are inching ahead slowly, because they are the ones who have built up credibility over the last 20 years. And they are not, the YouTuber who suddenly comes up with a viral video build that credibility. So yet another interesting trend that we are seeing is that more and more often our advertisers are asking to be associated with credible micro influencers, and they are finding credible micro influencers on legacy media platforms. Just as an example, one RJ in one of our smaller cities, a campaign that was done on his page versus a campaign that was done on the brand page, 8 times the number of views, because that's the kind of engagement that they have built up in a very sustained, consistent fashion over the last couple of decades by doing that same show 11 to 2 in the morning every day, 9 to 1 in the morning every day. Next slide, please. I also believe that one of the learnings we must draw from legacy media commanding so much credibility for their content is that publishers need to have the courage to get consumers to pay for content. Whether it is consumers directly, whether it is through getting Google to content, Facebook to pay for content, but we must have the guts to get a subscription pay model going. The worry always has been that, oh my God, if I raise my cover price, my circulation will dip. If my circulation dips, my readership will go down. Readership goes down, my advertiser will not pay me what I want. The actual fact is that if you are able to give credible content, there is no impact on circulation. If you see the table below, Gujarati Midday, one of the other brands in the Jagran stable, Inkalab, we've been steadily raising the cover price every year. Till today, when it is at 7 rupees and 8 rupees, it is twice the cover price of the English broadsheet in the same city. But there has been no impact on circulation. Similarly, Midday operates in different formats on a pay basis. So the website has a freemium subscription model. The paper obviously has a cover price at which you sell it. The digital tabloid, which we launched very successfully during the COVID, again is a subscription model. I think to de-risk the media business, we have to ensure that half our revenues come from subscription. I think it was 20 years ago when I was working with ZTV, and Subhash ji and I used to go meeting investors, and we used to say, today all our revenue comes from advertising, but sooner rather than later, 40% of our revenues will come from subscription. And no investor used to believe us. And yes, it took time. It took 10 years. But today, one of the reasons why television is in a better position than any other medium is because it has de-risked it by ensuring that nearly half its revenue comes from subscription. And I think that is something that, whether it is print publishers, digital publishers, I just wish the subscription model too, but everybody must ensure that the consumer pays for content, because that's the only way we will be able to give her credible content. Which brings me to my last trend that I want to talk to you. Next slide, please. And that is that in the last 3 years that I've been watching and have been part of the media industry, I have only seen engagement with media go up and up and up. When we first started doing media planning and media buying, we had very little choice because there was only one Hindi feature film and one Rangoli and one Chitrahar that we could advertise, and it was a very passive form of interaction with media. So the consumer and his family and the neighbors used to sit at 9 p.m. and watch the news together. They used to collect on Sunday and watch the Hindi feature film without having any watch what they were watching. Whatever Doordarshan showed us, we all had to watch. So from those days, one-way communication to when suddenly there was a plethora of channels and radio stations and print, etc., etc. This frequency and engagement only went up. To today, where not only it is about reach and frequency and engagement, it is equally and even more so about interaction. It is equally and even more so about user generated content. This is the level of engagement the consumer is having with media. That the fourth wall, in a sense, her and the media has broken, because she sometimes herself is both the medium and the message. So the transition from a passive media ecosystem to a highly interactive media ecosystem is something that we've all watched in the last 30 years. The natural fallout, of course, has been that from 1 hour of media consumption today, the Indian consumer spends close to 9 hours interact all forms of media: print, radio, television, OTT, digital, social, outdoor, etc., etc., etc. But coupled with this increased engagement with media, the last 20 years have actually seen, next slide, please, increased commoditization of media buying. There used to be days where I remember big clients such as, Amul, etc., used to buy basis their subjective gut feel. Crores of spent on Amul Surabhi and Amul Chandrakanta and PNG. All the clients used to invest heavily in figuring out both quantitatively and qualitatively what works in media. Unfortunately, in these 20 years, all I have seen is media getting and more commoditized. Till today, the only conversation our media seller with the media buyer is on CPT. It is invariably and always a single line communication. What rate will you give me? What rate will you take it at? It is ironic, fortunate, it is extremely sad that on the one hand we see engagement go up fold with our direct consumer, which is the reader, the viewer, the listener of media. Equally, we are seeing a decrease in engagement, because what kind of conversation can you have pointer on CPT? What has this led to? My final slide, please. That this dramatic rise in media consumption has actually gone in tandem with the devaluation of our ecosystem. So that today, when you look around, media consumption, the Indian media consumer is spending almost as much time consuming media as his counterpart in China is, as his counterpart in US is. But the difference between per capita media spend is for all of us to see. $32. $32 is the per capita spend in India. $222 is the per capita spend in China, and 2,260 is the per capita spend in US. That is the magnitude of difference in per capita spends when consumption is broadly the same. It's just not the media product which has got devalued, let me tell you. I think somewhere, sadly, I've been a media planner for 10 years of my life. Sadly, it is the entire media ecosystem that has got devalued. So the media buyer and seller have only CPT conversations. The media agencies are seen as purchase managers. When once upon a time, media planning, media buying was a consultancy approach. The client value the inputs given by the media planner and media buyer, not a purchase manager relationship. Clients used to invest so heavily of their time in media, whereas today I see humongous amount of time being spent by clients on the creative elements of the ad, the digital campaign, the print communication, the radio audio spot, and minuscule time spent on the hundreds of crores spent on media, because how much interest can anybody have in a purchase decision, enterprise purchase decision? So in summary, what I would like to say, my summary, can you magnify it? So the points that I'm making to all of you, and the trends you must catch on to if you want to see the media industry prosper and succeed, is one: increasingly advertisers are becoming very comfortable with phygital and hybrid solutions in the way they market to their consumers, in the way they sell to their consumers, where everything works: offline works, brick and mortar works, digital works, different distribution work. This advertiser is going to expect digital hybrid solution media, and we must be ready to apply the same to him. In the age of fake news, increased uncertainty which ought to stay for some time, it is legacy media platforms who have built credibility over consistency over time, by giving consistent quality over time, by giving fact check news over time, that are commanding credibility. And micro influencers who are part of this legacy, part of these legacy credible platforms, will also command a over other types of influencers. As far as my own community is concerned, my message to them is getting consumers to pay for content is the only way to de-risk the media business model for all publishers. Commoditized purchase of media has eroded the value of the entire media industry, as we know. I mean, we are spending, our consumers spending 9 hours media. That's the second highest time he spends after sleeping. And what is the size of the media industry? 1% of GDP. When actually it should be at the center of the GDP. 9 hours being spent on this particular service. 1% of GDP. But all is not lost. As engagement with media goes up even further, and we will just figure out different ways of using hybrid media solutions. As engagement with media goes up, we need to figure out ways on how to create, how to actually monetize the value that our consumer is already for us by her increased engagement. Finally, last slide, please. So when I talk to you about what are the macro trends in media, when I talk to you about hybridization, about commoditization, about micros, I want to tell you that I'm not talking about print, radio, or outdoor. Not about print, radio, or outdoor. It is not about a publisher talking to a media planner or a media buyer or an advertiser. It is about the entire media industry. It is about the entire media ecosystem. And as I said right in the beginning, that the choice whether we will see a future full of hope or a future full of despair, the choice will see summer and spring coming on to a medium, to an industry which is stagnating today, is a choice that both of us have to make by understanding what is happening with our consumer, understanding what is happening with our advertiser, and coming up with new ways of engaging with both, so that we are really able to extract the maximum value for media as a whole. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Purohit, for such an illuminating session. And I'm sure all of our viewers would agree when you say that media is going to go on an upward curve, and the entire ecosystem is going to go on an upward curve, and not just any one particular stream. I'm sure all of you also agree on so many highlights and so many key takeaways that some of our speakers have spoken during the sessions. Then don't forget to use the hashtag PMAR2021 and join our online conversation on Twitter and tell us which were your key highlights from the session so far. 2020 can undoubtedly be called the year of the digital medium. While other mediums were dealt with a heavy blow, digital emerged as the biggest beneficiary in the COVID year. But can it really sustain the momentum? Now, we have with us Mr. Ajit Verghese, Chief Commercial Officer, ShareChat, to talk about the headwinds and tailwinds that the digital juggernaut must navigate to stay on course.
Yeah, I can start. Okay, good evening, everybody. I'm Ajit Verghese, Chief Commercial Officer of ShareChat. I think very interesting sessions preceding me with especially the chat between Vikram and Uday, and a very thought-provoking session from Apurva is something that I was found very interesting. I think first of all, I would love to thank Sam, Vikram, Nawal, and eForum for giving me this opportunity to present my thoughts on how to navigate the digital journey from here on. Just put on to the next slide. Just to give, before I come back to my main topic of discussion, I would love to give you just a background of the whole behavioral change that we have gone through. Look at the advances in technology in the last 1 decade, especially with the recent emergence of machine learning, artificial intelligence, AR, VR, Internet of Things, wearables, blockchains, payment gateways. We can go on and on this, right? But I think what we have seen is a rapid change in human behavior. I think, and if you now couple that with the change impact of COVID in the last 12 months, we can also see a big attitudinal shift. Now, whether it's that shift towards quality, safety, privacy, social, trust, or even the general outlook and purpose of human life, right? I think there is a drastic change in attitude. Normally, attitudinal changes happen over a period of 3, 5, or even a decade. I think what we have seen over the last 12 months is something that has navigated the entire journey in a period of 12 months. So I think overall, we all understand that with this behavioral and attitudinal change, we are probably in the midst of a big disruption. We are all aware of that disruption, right? But I think the key question that comes to my mind is that are we agile enough to adapt to that pace of that evolution? I think that's the real question that is coming to my mind especially looking at the consumer and the marketing space. Moving on to the next slide. Keeping this with the background, I would love to introduce the topic of discussions on what are the key headwinds in the digital ecosystem. I think if you look at all the noise around digital ecosystem in the recent times, now whether it is the data dialogue, whether it is the regulations, whether it's the discussion about monopolies, the frauds, etc. All this discussion has one core theme that is central, and that to me is the discussion of consumer privacy. I think that has become extremely critical and will probably be critical in the years to come, in the next 2-3 years. I think I would love to discuss this as the biggest headwind on today's session. I think the world of advertising, marketing, or content personalization, or the delivery, the way we have known it in the last 1 decade, or we have learned over the last 1 decade, is probably going to change. We all know the cookie is definitely crumbling. Now, the question is, how do we manage that? How do we navigate that? What should we be prepared for? I think the first thing that comes to my mind when I say cookies crumbling is this whole dialogue about personalization, which came about in the last 5 or 7 years. I think that probably goes out of the window, and that is really concerning me. I think serving advertising based on any kind of demographics or user behaviors is almost impossible without identifiers, right? I mean, yes, there is Apple Safari browser which is talking about privacy and privacy to the consumers and permission based advertising. So that ecosystem, since it's a closed ecosystem, that may still continue. But look at what Google has introduced, something called Flock, right? I think it is only based on browsers. So basically what it means is contextual audience selection becomes the only option, or is it could be probably be based on on-site content. And that to me takes the personalization debate out of the window, and that is concerning. Now let's start breaking up the digital ecosystems into multiple fields, right? When we look at SEO, for example. Now SEO, I think identifies play a slightly lesser impact because it operates on page content strategies. Now that and it has indirect role because it depends on the content the publisher wants to develop. But however, start looking at SEM. Now all marketing campaigns rely optimization reliance on attributing a consumer action to a marketing event. Now, whether you call it a purchase, whether you call it visit or app install, SEM would be definitely become tough if you are without identifiers and unique IDs of consumers. I think that's a real concern, and nobody is yet talking about it. We are all talking about what happens in a normal banner or a video advertising, but one of the largest spends that happen is search engine marketing. On the next point of social, let's look at social, right? If you look at social media promotions, again, activities can continue with the loss of identifiers, but let's start thinking about how would optimization happen if the result that we want to achieve is based on outcome, like whether it's purchase, repeat visits, gameplay, or even a sign up. That becomes extremely tough in the social world. uh, Without identifiers, publishers can't offer custom audiences, frequency capping, or other forms of optimization a campaign for effectiveness, right? A lack of attribution would mean there is only one source which is going to get paid for driving traffic or conversions, whereas the consumer is actually going through multiple touch points or multiple sites to complete an action. Now, that is definitely a loss of revenue for, if you look at the affiliate industry, right? I mean, we are not talking about the entire journey. We are talking about only an attributable event to the last mile. If a revenue cannot be attributed to a publisher who is providing the lead, or where the consumer is moving from one journey to the other, I think that's a big concern. If there is a loss of identifier, any loss of identifier along the chain breaks the entire attribution and subsequent any affiliate revenue that comes with it. I think that to me opens up a larger discussion on how is the consumer getting converted into the last mile. uh, let's look at fraud, for example. Now, how does fraud happen? Fraud happens mostly by mimicking on-site behavior or even the site itself, and therefore we don't know whether it's an actual person or it's a dummy behavior. Now, if you don't have unique identifiers, if you don't have the consumer IDs available, then how would you stop it? Now, I understand that big players in this publishing houses or big players that are already established over the last decade definitely have invested more. They have a better control on their users. They have mapped their journeys and have storage data for a long time. Will be fine. But what about the open web? What about the upcoming players? I think that is a real concern about that whole publishing ecosystem, where how does this whole consumer journey and the revenue gets earmarked for all the players. If I look at content now, while content, again, identifiers may not be directly involved in the process of content management. However, when we start looking at delivery of personalized content, which is managed through a content management platform, that is again going to be directly in line. I mean, as I said, personalization is the key that is getting lost without identifiers. Now, without identifiers, if you to distinguish a unique visitor to the page, without that, publishers cannot sort out the demographic of their audiences or what appeals to some users, while some users may be ignoring. But every time a user is going to a site, if there is no identifier, it's actually a fresh instance of a consumer. You have no track record whether the user had come before, what are the likes, dislikes. So publisher will have limited options for audience analytics and what offers the kind of details needed to optimize the development of their content offerings, right? If you look at the programmatic world, now the ability in the programmatic world is clearly uh, trying to figure out the anonymously identify the individual user is the building block, right? The building block of any programmatic world is the user identity. As buyers and tech partners use these unique identifiers to create the audience segments, whether you do frequency capping or any other transaction mapping across segments, and make sure that your campaign is effective or your campaign can be measured in a reasonable way. Now, principal parties participants in this media transaction have continuously used third-party cookies and should be considered to realize that the audience benefits in a programmatic channel. So a third-party cookie is actually the linchpin for a non-vertically integrated publisher, that is obviously the open web, to realize that this is the value created by the programmatic channel. I think that's essentially, again, a huge miss. I know there are a lot of dialogue which is going on a unifier ID, something like what Trade Desk is developing, or something that the others like LiveRamp and is developing based on deterministic modeling, and that should solve a bit of the problem that we are facing in the programmatic world, because we can have unique IDs possible in unifying IDs across the industry, but that only solves some part of the problem, not the critical mass of the problem. If I look at e-commerce, for example, now identifiers and audience recognition are absolutely necessary to maintain a cohesive shopping experience. Imagine you going into an e-commerce site, and each time you go, if there is no history of browsing or the selection of certain items and placing it in a shopping cart, or completing a purchase, or managing the whole shopping experience seamlessly each time a consumer is visiting, and the checkout process. Imagine what happens if it's every time you go into an e-com site, it's a new journey. Now, there hasn't been good clarity in the industry today. E-com players are a bit silent on how this journey is going to go through. They are not talking about cookies or non-cookies. They are probably in better control of their own customer today, and that's why probably there is a bit of silence there. But I think this is, again, if there is a regulation, if there is an industry standard about not having cookies, then definitely it's going to impact the e-com experience. So while these are some of the headwinds that we are seeing in a cookieless world, whether it's going to come in this year or whether it is going to come in the impact is going to be seen in the next year, I think there are a lot of questions regarding how will it evolve, whether the industry or even the regulators or government would allow different browsers to have different set of standards, or different platforms maintaining their own set of standards and own experiences. What happens to cross-channel evaluation? What happens to frequency mapping? How does advertisers move into saying that is it going to be silo platform-led planning, or how do I make sure that I'm in control of my customer, and I have a way to attribute, and I have a way to measure effectiveness of my campaigns across my customers. I think that's a big headwind. Discussions are still on, according to me, but the challenge is yet to be seen in full scale as we go into the future. My next point is, go over to the next slide. The next headwind is actually a bit of opportunity and a challenge. I think we all know about the digital ubiquity, right? I think 10 years back or 15 years back, we all had physical way of working across physical experiences, retail or movies, or any of our experiences as a consumer or a human is about physical. And we always start, the digital was an alternative. Like, we can also watch some videos, we can also have a experience outside the physical world. But now with this whole COVID acceleration, I think we have now seen there is a virtual and digital world which can satisfy most of your needs, but there is also a physical alternative. I think now, not that I'm proposing either, there is always a coexistence of both the worlds, but I think this opportunity has given a great opportunity for the larger ecosystem, but also given a huge headache for a lot of the transition of the business. I think if you look at the business or the consumer, it's no longer restricted by any geography. It has created a unique situation where consumer is at the driver's seat. Brands are going to the small and medium brands are finding themselves competing with the large global brands, which is a good opportunity. But that opportunity has got challenges in both sides, right? Big established brands who had established models of working, supply chains, managing cost of being like fast, cheap, and good will be extremely tough, and both the speed and the investment becomes a challenge. Now, for the larger economy of small brands and the SMBs, and now have a great arena of competition. However, it's a completely different model. It's a completely different speed, and investment on the fingertips is absolutely necessary for them to scale up and compete with the global brands. Now, what is critical here is disruption is given. Investment in alternate models is a must, and a lot of thinking is going on how it can not be dependent on physical infrastructure. So, to me, these are the two big headwinds that we have. One is on the consumer privacy space, and one is on the digital ubiquity, both giving an opportunity and a big challenge on how businesses will evolve, how supply chains will evolve, how established business models will be changed, and new alternate ways of working is going to come. With that, I think one of the go over to the next slide, please. So I also thought, yes, there are lots of challenges, there are lots of problems. I think in any of the mediums that you look at, there is always going to be a challenge, there is always going to be an opportunity. And I think we as professionals, whether it's marketers, advertisers, publishers, our job is to constantly evolve. And I constantly evolve at the pace of that evolution. I think whenever I personally have gone through this across the last 25 years of my work, and have seen transformations across every 5 years, I have always believed that go back to basics. The philosophy of advertising, the philosophy of marketing over 100 years has not changed much, but yet it gets modernized, it gets new technology comes in, and we all keep improving our ecosystem using the new methods of technology, right? So inherently, I think my suggestions or my recommendations on tailwinds of digital economy would be in that space of consumer content and commerce. But what we would probably look at is what are the modern ways of achieving the same end. I think the first and foremost suggestion is for all the advertiser, whether you're an advertiser, whether you're a publisher, or whether you're in the marketing agency business. I think first and foremost that we have all been taught across the so many years is know your customer. I think never has it been more significant for advertisers or publishers to really invest in their customer and maintain their customer profiles, right? Now in the last 5-7 years, we all have seen the emergence of DMPs. Now DMPs are more in the advertising space about managing the advertising money. But I think what has come across now is CDPs, customer data platforms. I think it's an absolute must for whichever ecosystem you believe in. Knowing your customer is absolutely creating that identity, keeping that identity with you, getting more descriptive customer profiles, getting to record their behaviors and patterns, or any other qualitative data. And CDPs help you store it make it usable for a marketing activation. And not only that, it actually helps you not just use this for advertising, but it can actually break silos across the organization, and everybody in the organization can start knowing their customers and using it to the best possible way. So I think one of the big things that advertisers or publishers or agencies should look for is how do I become an expert in the customer knowledge, and how do I use that customer knowledge in everything that I do. I think smart and focused advertisers have definitely started investing in this, and we have seen a lot of CDP adoption in the top clients. But the key question that actually comes to my mind is how about the larger ecosystem? Now, what about the large number of clients in the mid segment, the MSMEs? How prepared are they for investing in this technology and storage and learning mechanisms? How do they build? How do they maintain? Do they have the technical know-how? Are there enough advisors in the market to suggest what is to be done? How do you operationalize it? I think that's pretty critical challenge that we face, but that is a good challenge than a bad challenge according to me. Having said that, if we have great CDPs, customer data platform, I think we should also start looking at how do you invest in good martech tools or third-party tools to help in marketing activation and analyzing performance. So even if there are less cookies in the market, or even if there is less, it's a cookie-less world, knowing our customer and maintaining the database and doing marketing activation in that space will help us get a better return on money, ability to track and ability to measure it will be much greater. Obviously, we spoke about privacy, and therefore it's always important into as you go into the future to invest in a consent management platform so that we can maintain the privacy of the customer, that we our customer, so that wherever we do marketing activation, we are in complete control of the privacy issues that the consumer wants. Remember one thing: customer continues to need more and more personalized and rich experiences. So consumer is completely in want of those. However, they do not want to sacrifice their privacy anymore, and to anybody and everybody, because each time they give some privacy or their data or something, how does it get passed on between various platforms, ecosystem, apps, is increasingly becoming a concern. But it's not about the rich experiences. They still need personalized and rich experiences as they consume media. The second point that I wanted to suggest as a tailwind is a suggestion to all in the ecosystem, is probably chase the customer, not the platform. Now, me being coming from a platform, it is probably a bit of irony that I'm saying this, but I genuinely feel good platforms will flourish when marketers, advertisers follow the customer, and then make an effort to make sure that it is working for them, the platform is working for them, because that's long term, because the advertisers will keep coming back rather than just testing and going away. I think if you look at all the dialogues about data privacy, walled gardens, etc., I think the big players will still benefit. I mean, if you look at customer privacy and regulations, etc., the big players will still benefit. I mean, the reason I'm saying that is because big players are more equipped to strengthen their ecosystem, bargain better with their open web players, has deeper layers and layers of consumer understanding, which the new players will not have, and they already have a large customer base available with them. So, having said that, big platforms will continue to strengthen. That's fine, but marketers need to follow the customer. The reason I'm saying marketers should follow a customer is because as you start looking at optimizing it across multiple platforms, it's not about only doing a JBP with a big walled garden. It's about looking at the larger ecosystem, making sure that there are private and trusted marketplaces you can test, so bring back more efficiencies in your advertising budget and in your consumer interactions. Make the big players more accountable, more responsible for your advertising effectiveness by talking to them about more data-led partnerships with larger set of publishers. Because when you open out this larger ecosystem, I think it will force the big players to start talking about data sharing, data effectiveness, because that's absolutely critical for you, because you know your customer and you will probably know how is it working better and better as we go along. I mean, I have spent long years in the industry, in the agency side, and being a purist, I would say a more cookieless world is world like a unifier ID by Trade Desk or other matchmaking or deterministic unified IDs are actually a good solution for the open web. But thinking about the kind of spends we are doing in the big players, almost I would say that I've come to this side and I've realized 60 to 70% of the spends are still on big players. So while the unified ID solution is great for the 20 and 30%, that's not enough to tackle the larger problem that we are facing. So I think I would encourage, keep chasing the customer, force the big players to start becoming more accountable through data partnerships, and make sure that we use unifier IDs and customer IDs in a very effective way, which makes everybody start collaborating together to make sure that the customer is the king. The third point that I wanted to actually bring about is actually a bit is more art and creativity, right? I think I'm just going to park my thoughts on this whole data and scientific logic that I was creating so far, but I just think I would want to test the boundary on what has happened to the brand building and creativity world. I think the whole marketing ecosystem, the marketing agency ecosystem was built on this the whole angle of brand building and creativity. I just feel, where has it gone? I think if I were to relate myself or anybody in this listening to this topic, and most normal people will find advertising annoying and intrusive, right? That's given, right? If any of us would have is watching a video on the internet or anywhere else, an ad comes right in the middle, it destroys the experience. I think we know it. Unless it catches our attention, it gives you a delight. It's a kind of new experience that I would love to look forward. Otherwise, if there is a skip button, if there is a skip now, how many of you would actually not press the skip now? 99.9% would press the skip button if there is an option like that. Now look at the irony. Now there is not only a skip button, some big publishers are also started putting a second video or an ad on a skippable format. Now one was not enough. Now you're making the consumer suffer with a second video. I think no wonder there are lots and lots and lots of ad blockers being installed. Last I heard, about 600 million across the world, and people are installing this so that they can avoid ads completely. Now, even look at the recent trend of OTT. I think a lot of installs, a lot of consumers are moving into the OTT space. It's also because of the clutter of advertising that you see on TV and now digital. I think people are now saying it's not only about rich content in OTT. I think rich content evolves as we go along in every 5 years or every 3 years, right? It's probably because it's an ad-free haven, and I think ad-free havens probably is making them have a richer experience of the platform and the content that is coming there. I think so. I think people will do everything to keep ads at bay, and that is going to continue rapidly as we go if you don't adapt to the new ways of creativity and brand building. The question that comes to my mind when I say this is actually, then why would actually marketers continue to hang on to the traditional models or traditional methods of advertising? Now, isn't marketing all about customer delight? Isn't it about being sensitive to what the platform, how the platform consumption is happening, and isn't it about the format and making it a seamless experience rather than being trying to be intrusive, over the top? Open a lot of sites when you open up in mobile, hundreds of ads pop up, banners, clickbaits, and would this mean anything for a consumer, publisher, or anybody, except that maybe they will come once and they will not never come back again. I would suggest is that for the marketing agencies or the marketers, I think one of the key things is to ask the question about, go back and ask the question about, why do we need marketing versus this whole mad rush about performance marketing. I'm not saying performance marketing is bad. I think it's about the balance between brand building and performance marketing, which is absolutely critical. Just remember, lesser and lesser brand differentiation in the marketplace, the more you're moving towards commodities, the less. And there's only one benefit when there is less differentiation and more commodity. It's the benefit is the e-com players, and I think, just think about it, why it's beneficial, and I leave it at that. My fourth point on the tailwind is actually about artificial intelligence. I just feel maybe in a presentation or an article, if you don't talk about artificial intelligence, it may not be as good. So I'm also going to talk about artificial intelligence a bit. Having said that, what I actually wanted to look at artificial intelligence in a slightly different way. I think, let me give you the context. I think when we start looking at last one decade, I think I'm also guilty in that, because I've been in that space, right? Most marketers or agencies are talking the same lingo that the publishers wanted us to talk, right? 10 years back, we were selling 1 second reach, 2 second reach. Then came in the syndicated content in the garb of user generated content. Now they are called PGC. Then it started saying that, even if you skip in 1 second or 2 second, it's a view. Now there is a industry standardization saying that if it's a 6 second view, it's fine, it's working for me, even if the ad is going to get skipped in 6 seconds. It's amazing. How do you compare that it's worked, right? But that's publisher wanted you to believe that, right? Then came in the last 3, 4, 5 years or 6 years, it came that click to purchase, I think, or marketplaces, which shifted the entire focus of ours from brand building to actually move into saying purchase performance, install, purchase visits, which is again a good, but it has now come to an extent where in my new job, when I'm meeting more and more advertisers, more and more people in the ecosystem, it's come to an extent where the dialogue is I'm doing brand building on television, and I'm only doing performance in digital. Yes, sometimes I throw in a bit of video there because it gives me TV plus plus philosophy. So it has come to that extent where we believe brand building is digital and TV is more brand building is more TV and digital is about performance. So my recommendation is dial the publisher speaker down and start looking at how we move ahead in terms of effectiveness, in terms of learning our consumer better, getting more deeper insights by digging more into data. My recommendation is invest in artificial intelligence, a lot more artificial intelligence led tools or the practices to have a very very deep understanding or a better view of emerging trends in consumer taste, consumer patterns, and tailoring comms and tailoring content in a way that is preferred by the consumers in the platform that they're interacting. I believe targeted, contextual, or mass marketing is going to continue. So we are not going to see that it is going to move one this direction or that direction. I think all of these will have importance in marketing world. It's the question is how do we learn more about our consumers. I think in the old world it was about analytics, and now in the new world, if you have to dig into deep data, if you have to dig into more into the entire digital ecosystems to look at patterns, scenario planning, or getting into future predictions or what you call as intuitive mind of what consumers is going to do, I think AI can deeply help in this to get more deep insights, what is happening at a hyper contextual or a level, and we can start personalizing experiences in a language that consumers would prefer. That's to me in the marketing world, AI is extremely important. My last point is actually on commerce. I think social commerce is a new field which is emerging, and I've seen this over the last 1 2 3 years, that how with the advent of social apps and the short video space, this whole ecosystem of peer-to-peer micro influencers, celebrities, macro influences, all their roles have kind of changed drastically. Probably it was already there, but it has come to the fore today. I mean, it's making everybody, all of us, a creator. We look into how-to videos, we look into reviews, we look into recommenders than just advertising. Which now that is a positive sign. It's encouraging a lot of brands to actually reach out to consumers directly, interact with them, and even transact with them directly. And that to me is the power of social commerce, and that's emerging. That's going to continue for the next 2 to 5 years. I strongly believe that, and probably that's one of the reasons why I have shifted into that, more into the social and commerce space. And especially now start looking at it in the background of COVID, right? With this whole journey of COVID in the last 1 years, this advent of digital currency, the fast tracking of payment gateways, the fintech developments has increasingly made it easy for everybody to access it, and scaling up is not a problem. Reaching out to the larger ecosystem of India now not a problem anymore. So my question is really, are brands really ready to get up close and personal with their consumers, leverage some authentic content, and start looking at organic influencers to drive advocacy in a continuous and a seamless way? With that, I would love to end my topic today with just few parting thoughts. I think one of the key questions that still comes to my mind as we discussed all the tailwinds is that, are we adapting to the kind of conversations consumers are doing in each of these platforms? the kind of engagement and engagement the consumers have with specific platforms. Now, whether it is within digital platforms or whether it is like Apurva mentioned about across platforms, how are they engaging? How are they interacting with that platform? How is the purchase intent getting developed across these platforms? Or are we just going to say, oh, I have made a 30-second or a click to purchase banner, help me run it across the platforms? Now that's the kind of adaptability and agility that I would recommend going forward. Now that I wear a publisher hat and a marketer hat, I think it's extremely important how we do this communication with our consumers in a format, in a way that they like, rather than just a uniform way of working. uh, Thank you so much, E4M. Thank you, Madison, for this forum, and quite appropriate discussion point at this time. I know there are no questions in this forum, but if there are any questions from the listeners, put it in the comment box, and the team would help you get back in a format that you would like. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Verghese. And yes, some of those key highlights, I'm sure our viewers will take advantage of all the points that you've spoken. And if you have any questions, you'd like to make a comment on the highlights that are being spoken by our speakers, don't forget to join our online conversation using the hashtag PMAR2021. Now, we heard Sam earlier speak about digital is the only medium that registered a positive growth in 2020. But the biggest share of the addicts is still consumed by TV. Within that, news witnessed a huge spike in viewership in the peak of COVID, but over the past few months, or rather many months, it has been mired in controversy. Is it possible to bring back credibility into news ratings? Well, let's find out. We have with us Mr. Avinash Pandey, CEO ABP Network, who will tell us more about it. We are very pleased to have you with us today, Mr. Pandey. Very warm welcome to you.
Kathy, I hope I'm audible to everyone. I'm usually the last speaker always in the pitch Madison, and often it gets delayed by everyone speaking one after the another. But the added incentive to people earlier where they was a cocktail. Now, unfortunately, this time we have to be on the webinar and probably make that cocktail at home. So, hello everyone. Thanks Madison and E4M to invite me. You have invited me to speak on this subject, and which is to bring credibility back into the news rating. It is for the first time online we are meeting. So in last, I don't know, 17 years or 20 years history of the Pitch Madison report, the topic that has been given to me by Vikram clearly says two things. One, the BARC has lost the credibility. And the second, how to bring it back. So next slide, please. So how to bring credibility back into the news rating? The topic has two statements. One is that BARC has lost credibility, and second, there is a need to bring it back larger in the interest of society, which is the foremost important. For marketeers, which I think they are responsible for the society, and news industry, which is the last in the order, because finally we are going to serve these two in that order. In next 15-20 minutes, the time that I have been given, I am going to address this question. First of all, I have a question to the audience that are not you liking the fact that there is no rating? Because now there is no shouting match happening on the television channels. There are no fictions being written around deaths of the celebrities or common man. And any kind of so-called created content has almost disappeared. People are covering normal farmers rally, PM's speeches, and discussing policy issues. Next slide, please. Just back at the two episodes of the last 45 days, which is very interesting to me. The first one, which is the case of the Indigo manager in Patna who was murdered right outside his home. It was a very brutal murder. A good-looking young chap, a very popular executive in Patna. Anybody who travels to Bihar actually lands in Patna, and he was the in-charge man there. Everybody knew him. He was murdered right outside his home. Over a dozen bullets were pumped into his brain in his car. Obviously, it was a very good television story, because somebody who is popular, good looking, young, driving a fancy car, getting murdered right outside his home, with no CCTV capturing the image. Can you play the next slide, please? Now look at what happened there. If you look at how news channels covered one after the another, you can keep changing the slide of all the news channels. So had the BARC data been in place, which happened in the case of Sushant Singh Rajput, everybody covered the story for next 3-4 days, and like all natural story, it started getting slowly into the bottom space of the news wheel. If the rating would have been coming, some journalist must have discovered an angle of a woman, a politicians, okay, CM being asked to resign because they are not able to solve a crime. A lot of people would have asked for CBI probe, etc., etc. Family would have been troubled. Some camera would have been chasing. Car would have been chasing each other. What happened, etc., etc. None of that kind of thing happened. It was an absolute normal reporting by all the news channels. So my question is, who is debasing the content? News journalists, producers, or the rating system? Now look at what happened on 26th of January 2021, and I'll show you a short video. Can you play that video, please? The first video. Next slide, please. There is a video. Can you play the video, please? Yeah, this video. Now, if you look at this video, one crazy protester went on to hoist a flag of the protesting group on the same pole where Prime Minister every 15th of August hoist our national flag. Now, look at what happened the next. Can you play the next video, please? Now, once this particular video was played again and again on the news genre, the police one cop was trying to climb again and trying to remove that flag unsuccessfully. Now, if happened next was that for 3 or 4 days, all news channels played the video of protester trying to raise a flag on that pole, but none of them played this video again and again. Had the BARC rating in place, this has a lot of drama. A cop trying to remove the flag, not able to climb, while a protester is managing to climb the whole pole. There would have been mockery done on the police forces that they are not able to control the crowd, they are not fit, all kind of blah blah things would have happened. But none of this happened because there was no rating. The drama has no place for the rating to play. Just before this, you can stop the video, please. Just before this, Farm Reform Bill, Parliament passed a very important bill during the summer of 2020, which was Education Reform Bill. It was one of the most serious reform that government has attempted to do. It is going to change the lives of our children in future and the way people are educated in this country to be at par with the Western nation. Most news channels did not do any debate, discussions, or for that matter, a critical explanation of that important bill. Those who did it, they were at the bottom of the pyramid of the rating. So all this while, we have been questioning in the larger public space and in media particularly, the intelligence of the news producers, that, what kind of crappy content you make, why do you shout, why do you do drama? So who is responsible for trivializing the news? Is the news rating system designed to measure entertainment? Can you come to the next slide, please? And that's the reason that the news broadcasters are angry. It is the entire rating system is designed to measure drama and not news. And I'm going to make short 5 points because I have the time, that to reflect upon why we got into this situation and what should we do to clear our conscience, which is much needed at this point of time. Number one, Why we have an NCCS system? Can you go to the next slide, please? If one wants to sell any product to, let's say, NCCS A, can someone explain to me what it means? As per current definition of NCCS, most of the taxi drivers in Mumbai or grade 4 workers in smaller towns classify to this NCCS category, including you and me. So as I'm appealing to the marketeers that you have a responsibility to society, if you have designed the NCCS system, whom are you targeting the product at? And how are you choosing the medium? That means someone in the marketing community or someone in different offices wants to control the media spend that he's doing by his own assumptions and his own research. So what are we paying BARC for? If you look at how the rest of the world works, if you go to the next slide, our system, which is moving towards the $5 trillion economy, is not even measuring whom I'm targeting to. If you look at the Nielsen Prism in the United States of America, look at the different cells that they are targeting at. If I can count on it, there are over more than 40. India is not a country, this is United States, where people from East Coast to West Coast have cereals in the morning and the breakfast, do barbecue over the weekend and meet their brother on the Sunday. I was born in Patna. My family came from a place called Buxar, which was about 100 kilometers away. And I can tell you there was a sharp difference in the way we consume food. We consume different products, what dialect that we spoke, our culture, marriage system, everything was very different. In a country like this, if you have just one system of NCCS, I do not know what justice we are doing to the future generation and the entire country. Next slide, please. If you look at 2025, 50% of the India's population is going to be in the cities, big or small. Are we measuring that in that way? I will say no. Look at the system in Great Britain. In fact, our family members who live in the Kent, borough of Kent, they have, in this criteria, they have a very different yardstick to measure people living in the central London vis-a-vis in the borough of Kent, in the same Greater London area. While we have in the NCCS system, people living in Adarsh Nagar or Greater Kailash, they are the same. How we are marketing the product, I don't understand. So this is a very outdated universe estimate. Next slide, please. You can go to the next slide. There is another problem. My second point is that the universe estimate is very, very outdated. Last estimate study was done in 2018. And we are saying that last 2025, 50% of India's population is most likely to be in the small or big cities. Thousands of connected TVs are sold every month, most of them in small towns. And India is a country which is already consuming the highest amount of data. But we still think that people who own two-wheelers, they have electricity connection and have a TV at home is a ACCA or B. How this is going to work, I don't understand. And that's what BARC needs to correct. In fact, within the BARC, next slide, please. If you look at the changes that has been happening in the regulatory environment, you have NTO 1, which came, where we all know that people went for choosing of the channel, the packs were offered, bill started going up and people started lowering the cost of the cable bill. None of that has been accounted for in the rating system. Still we say that 80% to 90% people watch anything other than news. While during the whole COVID time, people were watching only news channels, news genre share was still 10%. If you talk to any cable operator, they will tell you that business is suffering because of the NTO 1 came and people started unsubscribing channels. Their revenue went down. While we are saying that no, the same set of channels is being watched by the consumer. Next slide, please. If you look at UP and Uttarakhand, for example, we report about 16.5 million households, while the household has already increased to 22.3. In BARC, we report 5.4 million households in Delhi, which is right now 8.2 as per the Chrome study. Next one, please. However, what happened recently in the BAC, which we discovered through the chat which came in the recent past in the court cases, that BAC selectively changed the number of DD free dish without having any alternative field study, and how it was changed, which led to finally erosion of confidence in the BAC, because you have changed selectively one particular dish operator which is not even encrypted. No one can say that how many active boxes are active in the market. Tata Sky can tell you, Dish TV can tell you, but not DD free dish. But yet we increase the number of boxes that BAC is reporting in that market. So how do you think that? Why do you think anybody will get confidence on the BAC? So therefore, my submission is that, go to the next slide, please. So we must have a strong RPD data, the sample homes of the news. So we have 44,000 meter homes right now, but if you look at the existing currency of NCCS, which is so discriminatory, on top of that, you have 1.5% boxes only measuring BAC data as per the forensic report of BAC itself for the news channels. So how do you expect the diversity which is there in India, watching different kind of news channels from Tamil, Telugu to Kashmiri to Hindi, you are going to represent? And therefore, it is important the way system works. Therefore, my recommendation is that if we need to change the system, we must move to the RPD data. The sample homes of the news shall not be less than 5 lakhs at least. And we should use actively the technology to simultaneously move panel to reduce dependency on the manual selection of homes, which will do a lot of problems that we are facing today. Next point, please. This already I have spoken. Next point, please. So my fourth point is that please stop reporting the data like a stock market. You know, as the founder of DDB said, that all of us professionally use the mass media, which shapes the society, and we can vulgarize that society, we can brutalize it, but we can also help it into a higher level. And that's what the marketeer has a responsibility towards the correct data. More than news broadcaster, it is the marketeer who has a responsibility towards this. If you look at the reporting, the way BAC reports the stock data, can you go to the next slide, please? There is an insane amount of time that a news producer spend month on month, year on year, week on week, on how the movement happens. And somebody points out that whenever a particular anchor try to break the desk, the rating goes up. 5 people start imitating. If this is the way we civilize the whole medium, because all of us are under pressure to perform. It's very human nature. So this kind of algorithm, which is actually designed to report about news, is largely designed to measure television serials, where a particular actor dies and the rating goes up. There is a Rona Dhona on the show, rating goes up. There are emotions being shown, rating goes up. But news, people watch for intellectual satisfaction, for information, for entertainment. And if that is not happening, then I'm sorry, BAC is not serving the right purpose. Therefore, my suggestion is that we should move away from these kind of algorithm of reporting. Can you go to the next slide, please? So move to once in a month reporting, if we go back to reporting, and move to the total reach and eyeballs in a month rather than minute by minute, segment by segment, anchor by anchor reporting. It is not serving advertiser any purpose. It has been proven now. And you should stay that way until you change the universe study and the NCCS system. Once you do that, the data is reliable, all of us support that, and then we can move to the normal system of your program-wise reporting. The next slide, please. This is my last point, which I will get the maximum criticism after speaking, is the way the BAC is structured. Next slide, please. When we started the discussion on BAC, it was based on the BAB model. I have been to BAB office in London. I'm sure many of you would have been. You can count people on finger. All businesses are located at different offices. They work independently, and there is only one guy who is on oversight, is the CEO of the BAC. Unlike here, what happened in the past is that the CEO or the investors, shareholders, and people who have got stake in the BAC. So what is the problem with the BAC structure? You have one person in the BAC board, You have another person from the same company in the IBF board. You have another person from the same company in the TechCom. And you think that the system will work fairly. Nobody with a sane mind will believe that. While I'm not commenting on people's individual ability, but this is not a right way to do corporate governance. And that is why I'm saying that why the investors in the BARC does not have an arm's length distance from the functioning of the BARC. And it should be left to the professional marketeer, data scientist to measure and report that. So that is why I'm suggesting that we need to have a serious corporate governance reform within the BARC. We need to move away from a levy system. It's like taxation, that whatever is revenue, pay me so much. So BARC is nowhere responsible for serving its consumer, which is people like us, because they know that whatever revenue that particular network does it, the next percentage will come. If the BARC has to sell the same data, is the BARC confident enough to sell the data at that price? Is the question that we need to ask. And we have a responsibility as a founder of BARC to make it happen. And it will not happen unless, in a nutshell, we say, let Sunil have a freeway for some time. Let the BARC board and the IBA board stay out and support him in doing the reform that is needed. My next slide, please. So if we manage to bring these changes, you will see a Satyamev Jayate kind of content running on news genre. Uday spoke about it. Uday started Satyamev Jayate first on Star News. It did not work because it required so much of investment that we could not produce it. While Satyamev Jayate he managed to do this in Star Plus because it was funded well by the advertiser because of rating. If we don't reform this, you will not get good content like Farid Zakaria GPS or Anderson Cooper 360 degree in India. And it will also help. To give you an example, when Fox on the Fox News, when Tucker Carlson Tonight happens, it delivers the same rating as CBS top-rated show. But in India, a top-rated anchor does not deliver the same amount of rating. And why it is so? It is because it is tilted. The entire data system of BARC is tilted towards entertainment. And that's why you find trivialized news getting more rating than the serious news. All news owners know this, and all people who are running BARC also. It will also help if we make these changes happen. The TV news owners will slowly move to the pay model rather than the advertising support model, which is the most important thing to happen, because once it moves away from there, the whole content of the news genre will be better, and it will be better for the society. And advertisers with this grid system in place will be able to place ads and pay accordingly to the target consumer that you want to target, and not just placed on RODPS spots, running 300 spots. You see every break the same spots. Advertisers also, viewers are also getting bored and they're getting out of it. So it's in the larger interest of all of us, and the future generation is going to watch what we are going to do in next 3 months to 6 months time to reform BARC. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Pandey, for those very perceptive observations. We definitely would like to see those changes that you mentioned. Ladies and gentlemen, before we move to almost the end of the sessions, we would like to once again thank our presenting partner, ABP News, Aapko Rakhe Aage. We would also like to thank our tech partner, UpLive by Madison Turnt, for handling this entire virtual event. Can we have our partner's audiovisual, please?
न पाबंदी हो न कोई हद हो तो बस खुद बनाई सरहद हो। ये मुहिम है परतों में छिपे हर सच की तलाश की, सियासत पर रखी पैनी नजर और आंख की, खबरों की दुनिया में एक जिम्मेदार आवाज की, जुर्म और जुल्म के खिलाफ हर बेबस के लिए इंसाफ की। जब कोई हद नहीं इंसानियत के लिए जज्बात की, जब कोई हद नहीं खुशियों और ख्वाब की, तब कोई हद क्यों हो नए नजरिए और बदलाव की। तोड़ के हदों के ताले नए सपनों को पाले, बांधे सबको एक धागे, आपको रखे आगे। एबीपी न्यूज।
Ladies and gentlemen, I think I speak for most of you, most of our audience, when I say that this has been the most enlightening evening, putting the impact of COVID 19 into perspective and also providing a clearer picture of what 2021 is shaping up to be. Now, to conclude this evening's proceeding and to deliver the vote of thanks, may I please call upon Ms. Lara Balsara Wajifdar, Executive Director, Madison World, to join us on screen. A very warm welcome to you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Over 1,000 of you who have logged in for being with us virtually as we launch this report for the 15th consecutive year in a row. A big thank you to all our speakers, Uday Shankar, Apurva Purohit, Ajit Varghese, and Avinash, who made fantastic and thought provoking presentations. Whilst 2020 was a disastrous year, in hindsight, now that we have gone through it, we are all wiser for the experience of going through it. I think it's proved to all of us that we are resilient lot and we are highly adaptable and can respond quickly to any situation, good or bad. I think it's also showed to us the unshakable confidence of the Indian advertiser in the importance of advertising and its stellar role in brand share protection and building brands. Because, advertising in TV and digital almost came back by August and has increased month on month ever since. Well, as everyone says, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. And 2020 proved that we can get going in tough times too. And on this positive note, thank you once again, ladies and gentlemen, and have a very good evening. Thank you.